Chapter 1956. When Xianxia heard this, he was already tempted. He had heard of the Yin-Yang sages 1,000 years ago. More than 2,000 years ago, Shenwu continent had been embroiled in chaos, and various races had fought each other. Although the three divine kingdoms had been established, the overall situation of Shenwu continent had been relatively stable. However, there had been constant small-scale disputes. This was especially true for the regions outside of the three divine kingdoms' territories, which had become even more chaotic. In this chaotic era, the powerhouses of dozens of races had declared themselves kings and attacked each other, seizing territories and resources. The three divine kingdoms could not interfere, so they could only suppress the chaos within their borders. They were indifferent to the conflicts outside of their borders. At this moment, two powerful martial sages with extraordinary means appeared out of nowhere. They were able to move freely, suppress the chaos, and resolve the disputes between the various races. They had won the respect of countless powerhouses and the admiration of hundreds of millions of people. In a short 20 years, the two martial saints had pacified the various regions outside of the three divine kingdoms. Dozens of powers, races, and tribes had publicly expressed their allegiance to the two martial saints. Countless commoners had even taken the initiative to ask the two martial saints to stay and lead them to prosperity. However, the two martial saints were not attached to power and drifted away, returning to seclusion. The two martial saints were the famous Yin-Yang sages. The two of them were a celestial couple. The male martial saint Yang Tian was a peak martial saint of the human race. He was a peerless powerhouse with extraordinary talent. The female martial saint Yin Qi was the princess of the Ice Feather clan of the demon race. She was a peerless genius martial saint. The two of them had similar backgrounds and experiences. They had both been born in ancient and noble clans, and their statuses were prestigious. However, when they were young, their clans had met with great changes and been destroyed. The two of them had shouldered the burden of a blood feud and had struggled to survive. In the end, the two of them had risen to become peerless powerhouses and had taken their revenge. Although there were close to 100 martial saints in the world, the Yin-Yang sages did not have much experience and were very young. However, their strength had reached the rank 8 and rank 9 martial sage realm. Among the martial saints, they were already peak existences. Yang Tian, in particular, was known as the genius closest to becoming a martial god. If a fourth martial god appeared on the continent, it would be him. However, the good times did not last long. More than 1,800 years ago, the last time the Yin-Yang saints appeared was in the depths of the ruins of God. At that time, both of them had reached the 9th level martial sage realm and seemed to have been exploring the ruins of deity in search of an opportunity to break through to the martial god realm. But since then, the Yin-Yang saints had never shown their faces again. For the next 300 years, countless warriors on the continent were discussing and curious about the whereabouts of the Yin-Yang saints. Most people believed that the twin sages of Yin and Yang must be cultivating in seclusion in a secret realm, trying their best to break through to the martial god realm. However, this was only everyone's guess and they were unable to confirm it. That was until more than 1,500 years ago, when the Kenshin appeared out of nowhere and rose to prominence as an invincible force, entering the sights of all the martial artists in the world. Since then, Kenshin had attracted everyone's attention, drawing the fanatical worship of hundreds of millions of martial artists. All the martial practitioners in the world were discussing him passionately and worshipping him like a god. Especially when Kenshin had broken through to the martial god realm, taught the two martial gods and left through the rift. His various feats had caused huge waves throughout the Shenwu continent, and they had been discussed by the common people for thousands of years. The legends of the Yin-Yang saints were gradually forgotten by the common people. If not for Jike's message mentioning this matter, Xianxia would never have thought of it. He held the jade slip in his hand and muttered to himself, "There are rumors that the Yin-Yang saints are cultivating in seclusion in a secret realm, trying their best to break through to the martial god realm. Who would have thought that after 1,800 years, the Yin-Yang saints would never appear again? Now there's finally news, but they've already passed away." The legendary Yin-Yang saints were a match made in heaven, and the woman was the most beautiful in the world while the man was unparalleled in elegance. They were a match made in heaven and everyone envied them. In the martial world, where power and influence ruled, this couple was elegant and otherworldly like a clear stream in a muddy world. They had actually died without a trace, which was quite a pity. Ji Tianxing sighed and his heart was filled with regret. At this time Jiku continued, after those powerhouses discovered the secret realm of the Yin Yang saints, a great battle broke out before they could even enter. Although most of them died, there were a few who managed to escape alive. After the news spread, countless adventurers and martial artists flocked to the secret realm. Even the martial arts organizations of the various divine kingdoms sent their elites into the ruins of God. Everyone wanted to enter the Yin Yang secret realm to obtain the martial arts inheritance of the Yin Yang saints, as well as the wealth and treasures they had accumulated throughout their lives. At this point, Jiku paused for a moment before continuing. After the great demon saint heard the news, he wanted to go to the ruins of God personally to explore the Yin Yang secret realm. However, he had a heavy responsibility and could not leave the North Underworld mountain without permission. Therefore he gave this task to the newly ascended demon saint, the fifth demon saint Ji Shilua. Ji Shilua is already gathering his troops, and he plans to bring 100 elites to the ruins of God. I'm thinking of a way to join this team and make a trip to the ruins of God. After talking about the Yin Yang secret realm, Jiku suddenly thought of something and added, oh right, there's one more thing. The fourth demon saint, Patriarch Xuepao, had his Dharma body destroyed. After escaping back to the North Underworld mountain, he entered the abyss to recuperate. I heard that Patriarch Xuepao had to recuperate for 100 years before he could reconstruct his Dharma body and regain his peak strength. The ancestor Fiend Celestial felt that it was too long, so he personally used a secret technique to heal Patriarch Xuepao. He should be able to recover in about half a year. Brother Tianxing, Patriarch Xuepao was injured at Tianzhu Mountain. After he recovers, he will definitely go to Tianzhu Mountain again to seek revenge. You must be mentally prepared and be on guard. Jiku exhorted in a solemn tone, and then the transmission ended. Ji Tianxing silently kept the transmission jade slip and frowned as he fell into deep thought. I was right. Patriarch Xuepao will need 100 years to reconstruct his Dharma body. This is something the ancestor Fiend Celestial does not want to see. He is currently lacking manpower and will definitely use other methods to heal Patriarch Xuepao quickly. Even if he has to destroy Patriarch Xuepao's demonic foundation and sacrifice his future, the ancestor Fiend Celestial will not mind. This result was just as Ji Tianxing had expected. He was not surprised at all. After all, Patriarch Xuepao would need half a year to recover. Only then would he come to Tianzhu Mountain to seek revenge. Ji Tianxing did not mind. What really surprised him was the appearance of the fifth demon saint Ji Shilua. The ancestor Fiend Celestial is indeed powerful to have nurtured the fifth demon saint in such a short time. Since the various powers and Ji Shilua are going to the ruins of God to obtain the inheritance and treasures of the Yin Yang saints, I must go to the ruins of God. Not only do I want to join in the fun, but I also want to meet the new demon saint. Chapter 1957. Ji Tianxing had made up his mind to go to the ruins of God. However, he was not in a hurry. The mystic realm where the Yin Yang saints had passed away was not a place for ordinary people to enter. Even if various forces and adventurers flocked there, he did not have to worry at all. The mystic realm and treasures could only be obtained by those who were fated. It did not mean that whoever arrived first would get it first. Ji Tianxing decided to cultivate in seclusion for a few days and break through to the fifth level of the tribulation stage as soon as possible. After all, his strength had reached the peak of the fourth level and was not far from the fifth level. After he was ready, he passed through the secret passage in the corner of the secret chamber and entered the star divine furnace underground. Swoosh! He stretched his limbs and dived into the silver-white sea of fire, allowing the star divine fire to burn his body. He shuttled through the sea of fire like a fish and quickly swam to the center of the sea of fire and sat cross-legged on the star torch. Then he focused on using the star body refinement art to absorb the star divine fire to refine his Dharma body. 8 days passed quickly. Ji Tianxing cultivated in the star divine furnace for 8 days without being disturbed by anyone. After 8 days of cultivation, not only had his physical body strengthened to the extreme, but he had also absorbed a large amount of star divine fire. His strength had increased by 80% and reached the limit of the fourth level of the tribulation stage. Therefore he ended his cultivation and left the star divine furnace. After returning to the secret chamber, he naturally sensed something in his mind. In the unseen world, the heavenly Tao sent down a hazy thought. His fifth tribulation would be in 2 days. After confirming the date of the tribulation, Ji Tianxing calmly meditated and adjusted his breath. He had to adjust to the best state to welcome the arrival of the tribulation. Of course, in these 2 days he had to continue to condense the sword intent. Condensing the sword intent now could not only greatly increase his combat strength, but more importantly, it was to prepare for the future. When he returned to the martial sage realm, he would hide the sword in the void and control thousands of swords. Without his sword intent, the power would be greatly reduced. Unknowingly, 2 days passed. On the morning of the 3rd day, Ji Tianxing ended his cultivation and walked out of the secret chamber. After 2 days of cultivation, his sword intent was more condensed and would soon be successfully condensed. Of course, this was a matter for the future. What he needed to do now was to transcend the 5th tribulation. Ji Tianxing leisurely walked out of the Heaven Pillar Palace and came to the dojo that had a radius of 100 miles. It was the time for the morning sun to rise. The warm sunlight shone on the dojo. The morning fog had just dispersed, and the air was still filled with fresh spiritual energy. More than 30 green-robed outer disciples were practicing their swordsmanship on the dojo. Everyone's movements were uniform. Sword light flashed and sword chi burst forth, showing their valiant poise. Even though those disciples were only practicing the 4 C's return to one sword technique created by Kenshin, the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains introductory sword technique, the Pillar of Heaven's Mountains sword technique. However, everyone practiced very seriously and carefully. Their moves were perfect. It was obvious that they had put in a lot of effort for many years. Ji Tianxing was satisfied and couldn't help but reveal a gratified smile. When he walked to the center of the training hall and prepared to receive the heavenly tribulation, the disciples had just finished practicing their swordsmanship. Everyone gathered in groups of 3 to 5 to exchange their experiences in martial arts and swordsmanship. Suddenly, someone saw Ji Tianxing and immediately shouted excitedly, "Look! It's young Master Ji." This shout was like a stone thrown into a lake, causing ripples to appear on the surface of the lake. The rest of the disciples were alarmed and looked towards the center of the training hall. After seeing Ji Tianxing, everyone was excited. They cheered and discussed. It's been 3 months and young Master Ji has appeared again. Young Master Ji is so elusive. Every time he appears he has to transcend the tribulation. I bet that young Master Ji is going to transcend the tribulation again after cultivating in seclusion for 3 months. Everyone look. The weather is changing. Tribulation clouds are forming. What are you waiting for? Go and inform the other disciples to come and watch young Master Ji transcend the tribulation. More than half of the green-robed disciples hurriedly left the training hall to inform the others. The remaining green-robed disciples also consciously retreated to the edge of the training hall and watched excitedly. Wind and clouds gathered high in the sky. Boundless gray clouds gathered above the Heaven Pillar Mountain. About 15 minutes later, the gray clouds gathered and turned into a 100-mile-wide black cloud vortex that enveloped the training hall. The morning sun was blocked and the peak of the Heaven Pillar Mountain became dark. A terrifying aura spread out from the tribulation cloud vortex and enveloped the Heaven Pillar Mountain. Purple, gold, and blue lightning flashed and exploded in the vortex. Hundreds of people who heard the news gathered around the training hall and looked at the training hall with anticipation. Ji Tianxing stood in the middle of the training hall calmly, exuding the aura of the heaven and earth. Soon the first bolt of lightning struck. Boom! Just as Ji Tianxing expected, this was his 5th tribulation. 5 bolts of lightning struck from the tribulation cloud vortex. The 5 bolts of lightning were of different colors. They were gold, red, purple, blue, and there was also a bolt of black lightning. This type of black lightning contained the power of annihilation. It was terrifying and unpredictable. Ji Tianxing had seen it the last time when he transcended the tribulation. He was fearless as he calmly raised his palms. He put his index and middle fingers together on his left palm and used the Sword Soul Dao technique to stab the sky 9 times. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. 9 huge golden swords were born. They carried the power of annihilation and blasted towards the 5 bolts of lightning. He drew a circle with his right palm and struck out a mysterious black light. It turned into a huge vortex and flew into the sky. Bang! 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 Loud noises were heard as the sword light shattered the 5 bolts of lightning on the spot. Thousands of lightning fragments fell and were enveloped by the black vortex. They were immediately swallowed by Ji Tianxing. Just like that, the first heavenly lightning was easily neutralized by him. Next, the tribulation cloud vortex struck the second and third bolts of lightning one after another. Whether it was 10 bolts of lightning striking at the same time or 20 bolts of lightning striking at the same time, the result was the same. Ji Tianxing struck out a sword light with his left palm and a vortex with his right palm. He easily destroyed the bolts of lightning and devoured them. After the third bolt of lightning, the tribulation cloud vortex surged faster and started to change. By the time the fourth bolt of lightning struck, the number of lightning pillars had reached 40. Moreover, each lightning pillar had 5 colors. When the powers of the 5 attributes were mixed together, the power increased by several times. The most terrifying thing was that the 40 bolts of lightning were arranged in an orderly manner. They contained the mysteries of the heavenly Tao and the power of a formation. It was even more terrifying and unpredictable. Ji Tianxing had no choice but to be cautious and use 100% of his strength to resist. 15 minutes later, the 4th, 5th, and 6th bolts of lightning were all neutralized by him. Even when the 6th bolt of lightning struck, there were as many as 160 bolts of lightning, densely packed like a sword formation and a rain of arrows. He still destroyed all the bolts of lightning and devoured them. He was completely unscathed and looked completely relaxed. To him, no matter how strong the first 6 bolts of lightning were, they were just appetizers. The real highlight was the last 3 bolts of lightning. Chapter 1958. After the 6 bolts of lightning, the tribulation cloud vortex began to change again. The pitch-black tribulation cloud vortex was soon dyed with a layer of dark red blood. The 7th bolt of lightning finally descended. A dark red bolt of lightning struck down and turned into a large ball of blood light that enveloped Ji Tianxing. This was the inner demon tribulation. Ji Tianxing was enveloped by the blood light. His soul and consciousness were trapped in illusions as he endured the test of the inner demon. All kinds of illusions came at him. All kinds of bizarre but traceable pictures were constantly interrogating his soul. His willpower was under great stimulation and test. However, he maintained his original heart and did not waver. In the blink of an eye, an hour passed. Ji Tianxing finally turned the misfortune into a blessing and successfully resolved the inner demon tribulation. The dark red blood light that enveloped him also quickly dissipated. Immediately after, the 8th bolt of lightning descended. Kaboom! A 1,000-foot-long 5-colored bolt of lightning that looked like a divine dragon struck down from the tribulation cloud vortex. This was the great tribulation of wind and fire. Ji Tianxing could neither dodge nor resist. He could only endure the test. After the bolt of lightning struck him, it immediately turned into a 5-colored lightning fire that enveloped his body. The 5-elemental lightning enveloped him and ruthlessly struck his body. The blazing 9 heavens hurricane and the mysterious black flames surged into his body and burned his blood, bone marrow and internal organs. Ji Tianxing calmly endured and used the great tribulation of wind and fire to temper his avatar. His skin and flesh continued to fester and burn into black ashes that scattered in the sky. However, he quickly grew new flesh and blood that was stronger than before. After a full 15 minutes, the great tribulation of wind and fire gradually dissipated. He had successfully passed the great tribulation of wind and fire and tempered his avatar. His strength had more than doubled. After the 8 bolts of lightning, the tribulation cloud vortex suddenly slowed down. The vortex within a radius of 50 kilometers began to rapidly shrink and condense, becoming more and more solid. Within the black clouds, there was even a 5-colored dazzling light that emitted a mysterious power. Ji Tianxing looked up at the tribulation cloud vortex and murmured expectantly, "I have already passed the tribulation of 7 emotions, reincarnation, time and 5 elements. What tribulation will I face this time?" Roughly 100 breaths of time later, the tribulation cloud vortex had shrunk by 10 times, becoming only 10 miles in radius. Finally, the 9th bolt of lightning struck. Boom! A dazzling 5-colored lightning bolt shot down from the tribulation cloud vortex. At that moment, an earth-shattering sound of thunder shook the heavens. The entire pillar of heaven's mountains shook, and the heavens and earth were filled with an indescribable divine might. The dazzling light illuminated the entire peak of the pillar of heaven's mountains. It was so dazzling that no one could open their eyes. Ji Tianxing was suppressed by the formless power of the heavenly Tao. He was under unimaginable pressure and his face turned pale. After the 5-colored heavenly lightning struck him, it immediately turned into a dazzling 5-colored light that enveloped him. After a long while, the world finally regained its calm. Only the dazzling five-colored light with a radius of 10 miles was left floating quietly in the sky above the dojo. The hundreds of disciples around the dojo looked at this scene with confusion and whispered to each other. No one knew what mysteries this heavenly lightning had. At the same time, Ji Tianqing was in a vast world. The sky was blue and there were white clouds floating in the sky. A dazzling golden sun hung in the western sky, casting down a golden light for hundreds of millions of kilometers. Ji Tianqing stood on the peak of a mountain. Below his feet was a blue stone the size of a house. He was surrounded by a dense forest with towering trees. The forest was dark and the ground was covered with flowers and vines. There were also clusters of shrubs. There were flocks of birds with gorgeous feathers chirping on the branches in the forest. There were also many snakes, insects, and beasts that quietly moved through the forest, making rustling sounds. Looking into the distance, there was a vast grassland at the foot of the mountain with green weeds growing. There were flocks of birds flying in the sky above the grassland, and there were also agile tigers, leopards, and jackals hunting each other in the grass. At the end of the grassland, there was a mirror-like lake that reflected the light. Further away, the horizon was blocked by a dark green mountain range. Ji Tianqing stood on the blue stone, taking in everything around him. Breathing in the fresh and pleasant air and feeling the vast spirit qi of the world, he felt refreshed. Such a picturesque and peaceful world is a good place to cultivate in seclusion. However, I'm in the midst of a heavenly tribulation, and this space is definitely a test. This thought flashed through Ji Tianqing's mind and he remained vigilant at all times. He stepped into the sky and flew across the grassland like a stream of light, heading towards the end of the horizon. First, he had to understand this space and find out what kind of test it was before he could think of a way to resolve it. Half an hour later, he flew across the grassland and the majestic mountain range, arriving at the end of the horizon. There was endless darkness at the end and there was nothing there. It was sealed by the invisible power of the heavenly Tao. He turned around and flew in another direction to investigate the size of this space. About 2 hours later, he figured it out. This was a space with a radius of 10,000 miles, like a small world. There were mountains and rivers, flowers and trees, birds and beasts, and all living things. It was no different from the five elements realm. However, this small world was wrapped in endless darkness and sealed by the power of the heavenly Tao. He was trapped in the small world and could not get out. Could it be like the five elements tribulation last time, where I had to borrow the power of the small world to break through the darkness seal? It shouldn't be. The final test of each heavenly tribulation is different. The test of this heavenly tribulation is definitely not the five elements tribulation. Ji Tianqing stood high in the sky, frowning as he fell into deep thought. In the end, he decided to give it a try. He flew to the end of the small world and controlled the power of the five elements to condense a mountain range that extended into the darkness. However, the dark void was like an invisible wall and no power could enter. He tried to step into the darkness, but the moment he touched the darkness, he was sent flying back. The result was as he expected. The dark void was sealed by the heavenly Tao and he had no chance of escaping. If he wanted to resolve the test of the heavenly tribulation, he could only start from the small world. In the following half a month, Ji Tianqing had been wandering in the small world, searching for clues to resolve the test. However, he turned the entire small world upside down several times, but he still did not find anything. He had no clue. He was trapped in this small world and could not escape at all. However, when he was wandering in the small world, he discovered a strange thing. There was no night in the small world and it was always daytime. The wolves, tigers, leopards, birds, and beasts that he saw before were also growing at an exaggerated speed. Most importantly, the flow of time in the small world was more than 1,000 times faster than the outside world. He wandered in the small world for half a month and it was actually equivalent to 50 years. In 50 years, the small sapling became a towering tree, the birds and beasts became demons, and the wolves, tigers, and leopards also became demonic beasts. He also became old and his appearance was actually like a man in his 30s. Chapter 1959. Is this heavenly tribulations test related to time? This was Ji Tianqing's first thought. He knew very well that there were many kinds of power in the world. For example, the five elements, space, thunder, wind, rain, and so on could all be controlled by martial artists. Only the power of time was the most mysterious and difficult to master. Martial artists below the god realm could only use some formations and refining materials to change the flow of time. If one wanted to truly control time, it was only possible to reach the god realm. But on second thought it didn't seem right. I've already passed the space-time tribulation before. There's no reason for another time test, right? With a heart full of doubts, Ji Tianxing continued to wander in the small world. Soon another half a year had passed. With his concept of time, half a year had passed in the small world. But in fact, 600 years had passed in the small world. The former grassland had turned into a forest, and many towering trees had withered and aged. The newborn birds and beasts had turned into demons, and the aging beasts gradually died. In the small world, scenes of new life and death were played out every day. Ji Tianxing's form and face gradually changed, and he became a 40-year-old middle-aged man. He had explored the small world with a radius of 10,000 miles hundreds of times, and he couldn't be more familiar with it. But he still had no clue. He didn't know what this test was or how to resolve it. He could only cultivate in the small world and wait silently. Unknowingly, 6 years had passed. Ji Tianxing's strength had reached the limit of the 5th level of the tribulation realm, but he could no longer improve. More than 7,000 years had passed in the small world, and there had been tremendous changes. The vicissitudes of life, the scenes of new life and death, he had seen them all. And his own appearance had also undergone tremendous changes. He had become old and weak, and he had become a white-haired old man with a white beard that reached his chest. Even his strength had declined, his realm was constantly falling, and his magic power was becoming more and more exhausted. Such a scene made him anxious and worried. With complicated emotions he sighed. No matter how high a martial artist's wisdom is, they can't withstand the passage of time and the erosion of the vicissitudes of time. Even a peerless martial god can't escape the 10,000-year limit. In the end they will turn into ashes and return to heaven and earth. Only the heavens and earth exist forever. No matter how many tens of thousands of years pass, it will never disappear. As he thought of this, an idea suddenly flashed through his mind. All living things can't escape the 10,000-year limit. Even martial gods are no exception. Only heaven and earth can exist forever. Could it be that the test of this heavenly tribulation is related to heaven and earth? At the thought of this, Ji Tianxing was enlightened. His deep eyes flashed with a bright light. He hurriedly used the armillary heaven secret technique to merge himself with heaven and earth. Chua. In the blink of an eye, his figure disappeared, becoming one with the heaven and earth within 1,000 miles. At the same time, the peaceful small world began to change dramatically. The sun that always hung in the sky gradually disappeared into the darkness. The small world lost its light and was shrouded in boundless darkness. Immediately after, the spiritual chi of heaven and earth rapidly dissipated, and even the air disappeared. In just a few years, the small world had become a vacuum zone, no different from the dark void. The flowers and trees began to wither and wither. Large tracts of forests and grasslands turned into ashes and dust. The birds and beasts also quickly died. Even the demonic beasts with magic power gradually withered and died. 50 years later, the small world became a dark and cold world without any life. All living things had died, leaving only the cold earth. Of course, the only life that survived was Ji Tianxing. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianxing finally understood. I understand now, this is the great tribulation of heaven and earth. When he was in the upper realm, he had heard of the great tribulation of heaven and earth and the legend of the 5 decays of heaven and man. Under the shroud of the heavenly axioms every world was in the cycle of reincarnation, and all living things had a great limit. From new birth to growth to prosperity, then to decline, perish and rebirth, the cycle repeated. In low-level small worlds, 100,000 years was a cycle. All living things from new birth to reproduction, development and prosperity, until the great tribulation of heaven and earth arrived and returned to death, usually only took 100,000 years. For a large world like the 5 elements world, it usually took a few 100,000 to 1,000,000 years for a cycle. In the beginning, the world was a cold and dead wasteland, icebergs and seas. There were no living things. It was only when the 5 elements spirit chi appeared that flowers, trees and all living things appeared in the world. Then, in the long years, all living things developed, grew and gradually gained intelligence. When the world developed to its limit and all living things grew to their limit, the great tribulation of heaven and earth would arrive. All living things would be destroyed and returned to the world. When the next era came, the world would be reborn, Of course, no matter how many cycles the world went through, only heaven and earth would exist forever. After understanding all this, Ji Tianxing was suddenly enlightened and no longer worried. The changes in this small world are the microcosms of the various worlds. When the great tribulation of heaven and earth arrives, all living things will be destroyed, even martial gods are no exception. Only by transforming into heaven and earth can one avoid the great tribulation and survive. Ji Tianxing made up his mind and used the secret technique with all his might, trying his best to merge with the wider heaven and earth. As time passed, the world within a radius of 5,000 kilometers gradually shrank and dissipated. Soon another 2,000 years had passed. The world within 5,000 kilometers shrank by more than half and was only left with a radius of 1,500 kilometers. Ji Tianxing endured in the 1,500 kilometers of heaven and earth with incomparable fatigue, waiting for a new life. His mind and dharmic powers were exhausted and he was on the verge of fainting. Up until now he had already spent 10,000 years in this small world. The great tribulation had passed and a new life had arrived. A dazzling golden light appeared in the sky above Ji Tianxing. The sun reappeared and its bright sunlight illuminated the world within 3,000 kilometers. The power of the 5 elements gradually appeared and brought vitality to this world. Heaven and earth spirit chi reappeared and the cold desert turned into a mountain range with saplings and buds growing. In just a few short decades, the world within 3,000 kilometers returned to its original state and was filled with mountains, forests, grasslands, and lakes. Birds and beasts appeared one after another and grew healthily. The small world also began to expand to 4,000 kilometers, 5,000 kilometers, 6,000 kilometers. 800 years later, the small world grew to a radius of 5,000 kilometers and returned to its original state. Just like when Ji Tianxing first entered this place, it was a picturesque treasure land filled with spirit chi. At this moment, Ji Tianxing's test was finally over. He had successfully transcended the great tribulation of heaven and earth. Swoosh! With a flash of light, the world within 5,000 kilometers became distorted and blurry and soon dissipated. On the dojo at the peak of the heavenly pillar mountain, the 5-colored light within a radius of 5 kilometers quickly faded and disappeared. Ji Tianxing's figure appeared and stood in the sky safe and sound. Chapter 1960. Bursts of thunderous cheers rang out around the training hall and lasted for a long time. Ji Tianxing opened his eyes and saw the scene around him. He couldn't help but smile with relief. Although he had spent 10,000 years in the small world and had undergone a reincarnation and rebirth, those were all illusions created by the heavenly Tao and had nothing to do with the real world. In reality, he had only slept for 6 hours in the 5-colored light. Of course, he was still in his original appearance. He had the face of a 20-year-old and a handsome and mighty appearance. He didn't become a white-haired old man. His strength and realm didn't fall and his mental state was still full. He looked down at himself, looked up at his surroundings and recalled the experience just now. He felt as if a lifetime had passed. Back then, I only heard of the great tribulation of heaven and earth, but I didn't have the chance to experience it myself. Now that I think about it, even if I become a god, I might not be able to escape the great tribulation of heaven and earth, right? In this world, what could be immortal and indestructible? The king of gods? Heaven and earth? Or the sun, moon, and stars? Just as he was filled with emotions and thinking to himself, the vortex of tribulation clouds high in the sky dissipated and turned into a ball of sacred golden light that sprinkled down. Swoosh! The sacred golden light enveloped Ji Tianxing and quickly poured into his body, strengthening his Dharma body and soul. Ji Tianxing calmly accepted the reward of the heavenly Tao and quickly improved his strength and broke through the realm of martial arts. A quarter of an hour later, the sacred golden light dissipated. His strength and realm had also reached the 5th level of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. Glancing around the training hall and seeing that everyone was still cheering and discussing, Ji Tianxing didn't stay and directly left the training hall. After returning to the secret room, he summoned the Huanglong Taoist and told him a lot of things in person. After everything was arranged properly, Ji Tianxing took the Sword of Burial of Heaven and left Tianzhu Mountain alone. Swoosh! It was when the sun set. He flew high into the sky and rushed in the direction of the ruins of God. Tianzhu Mountain, the ruins of God, and Baiming Mountain were close to each other and weren't too far away. Ji Tianxing traveled alone at an extremely fast speed, like a shooting star streaking across the horizon. With his current strength, his flying speed was not much slower than a martial sage's. He could fly 200,000 li per day. Unknowingly, 20 days had passed. Ji Tianxing had been rushing with all his might and had not rested at all. On the morning of the 21st day, he finally entered the ruins of God. According to Ku, the mystic realm where the Yin Yang saints passed away was in the north of the ruins of God. That place is right next to the fallen blood lake and is located in the depths of the ruins of God. The surroundings are extremely dangerous. Ji Tianxing rushed towards the north of the ruins of God as he weighed the pros and cons in his heart. The news of the Yin Yang secret realm had spread throughout the ruins of God. Many adventurer teams and martial arts organizations had entered the ruins of God to search for the Yin Yang realm. However, he had reason to believe that ordinary people would not be able to pass through the ruins of God and reach the Yin Yang secret realm. Moreover, ordinary martial artists and experts would not be able to open the secret realm. He was not in a hurry. As he hurried through the ruins of God, he paid attention to his surroundings. 5 days later, Ji Tianxing flew over a towering mountain range. His divine perception suddenly detected a group of martial artists flying across the sky in front of him. They were also heading towards the north of the ruins of God. There were a total of 7 martial artists in the group. The leader's strength had reached the 2nd level of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. The other 6 martial artists were all at the 6th level of the Essence Soul realm and above. Their auras were valiant and fierce. Clearly, this was a group of adventurers. Moreover, they looked very elite and experienced. Ji Tianxing chased after them silently. He remained invisible and secretly eavesdropped on the news. However, he followed them for 4 hours. The adventurers had been rushing at full speed. They remained silent and did not talk. Ji Tianxing lost his patience and decided to show himself. He cast a few spells and knocked the 6 adventurers unconscious. Only the captain of the adventurers was left. He was able to withstand a single blow from him before he was captured. The adventurer team leader was a thin and dark-skinned middle-aged man. His eyes were like an eagle's, sharp and bright. This person had a gloomy and dangerous aura. Clearly, he had been through hundreds of battles and had rich experience. He was very sensible and knew that he could not afford to offend Ji Tianxing. Therefore, he obediently expressed his obedience. Ji Tianxing captured him and asked coldly, "Who are you? Where did you come from? Where are you going?" The adventurer team leader drooped his head and answered with a weary expression, "Senior, we are from the Heavenly Dipper Adventurer team. I'm Du Tiangang. We came from the 100 Gathering City in the south of the ruins of God. We are preparing to head to the central region of the ruins of God to investigate a ruin. We are alone and have not done business for several years. We are planning to try our luck." Ji Tianxing immediately frowned and asked in a deep voice, "You are going to the central region of the ruins of God to investigate a ruin? Aren't you going to the fallen blood lake in the north?" Du Tiangang was taken aback. He said with an odd expression, "Fallen blood lake? Senior, do you mean the legendary Dual Saints Mystic Realm? You think too highly of us. Although the Dual Saints Mystic Realm is a huge treasure trove, we don't even have the qualifications to covet the Mystic Realm. Before we can reach the fallen blood lake, we might be killed by other forces halfway." Ji Tianxing had been monitoring Du Tiangang's divine soul fluctuations. He could confirm that Du Tiangang was not lying. He took a deep look at Du Tiangang and asked, "You, this fellow, have some self-awareness. Alright, how did you know about the Dual Saints Mystic Realm? Could it be that the news about the Dual Saints Mystic Realm has already spread widely?" Du Tiangang hurriedly explained, "I'm sure Senior also knows that 100 Gathering City is one of the largest adventurer gathering places around the ruins of God. Our Heavenly Dipper Adventurer Team's base is in 100 Gathering City. We can be considered a small local snake. I got the news about the Dual Saints Mystic Realm from the Broken Sky Alliance. In 100 Gathering City, there is a branch of the Broken Sky Alliance. That is the strongest martial Dao force in the city. My senior brother is an elite of the Broken Sky Alliance and is qualified to know this news. It was also my senior brother who persuaded me not to have any ideas about the Dual Saints Mystic Realm, so as to avoid attracting a disaster." Ji Tianxing raised his brows and asked, "According to what you said, the Broken Sky Alliance is also interested in the Dual Saints Mystic Realm." Du Tiangang revealed a hint of a playful smile and said with a nod, "I'm afraid it's not as simple as just interested. They are determined to get it. I heard from my senior brother that the branch master of the 100 Gathering City branch personally led the team, leading more than 50 elites to move together. Looking at the Broken Sky Alliance's stance, I'm afraid that the Dual Saints Mystic Realm is determined to get it. Ji Tianxing also revealed a playful smile and said in a mocking tone, "Determined to get it? With this little manpower, what a fool's dream." Du Tiangang raised his head and glanced at Ji Tianxing. A hint of shock clearly flashed across his eyes, and his expression became even more reverent. He had reason to believe that this white-robed youth dared to look down on the Broken Sky Alliance's strength. He absolutely had unparalleled strength. Thinking so, he was even more glad that he did not resist and told the truth honestly. Chapter 1961. Since Du Tiangang was very sensible, Ji Tianxing did not make things difficult for him. After asking him a few more relevant questions, Lu Yin allowed him to leave. Du Tiangang thanked Lu Yin in fear and trepidation before hurrying to wake up the 6 warriors under him. Ji Tianxing quietly left, traversing mountains and rivers as he continued his journey to the north of the ruins of God. Half a month later he finally arrived at Fallen Blood Lake. It was evening and he was standing on a towering mountain peak that was 6,000 meters tall as he looked ahead. There was a vast lake at the foot of the mountain. The lake was at least 10,000 kilometers wide, and it extended from the foot of the mountain to the horizon. The lake water was unfathomably deep, and it had a strange light red color as if it had been dyed red by blood. A thin mist filled the air above the lake and it was also a light red color. The setting sun pierced through the mist and shone on the surface of the lake. The surface of the lake was deathly still and there was no wind or ripple. It was like a pool of stagnant water. The mountains and forests at the edge of the lake were also deathly still, and there were no birds or beasts to be seen. In short, the surrounding area was eerily silent, and it gave off a strange feeling. Ji Tianxing looked down at Fallen Blood Lake and muttered to himself, "Legend has it that Fallen Blood Lake was born in ancient times. At the end of the Great War of the Gods, a powerful and evil demon god was slain by the various martial gods. After the demon god fell, a drop of its origin demon blood fell onto Shinwu continent and into the ruins of God. That drop of demon blood was gradually eroded by wind, frost, rain, and snow until it turned into a pool. After a long period of dilution, it finally turned into a lake of blood. Any life form that comes into contact with the lake of blood will be demonized and lose their rationality, turning into a fallen demon." This was a legend that had been passed down from ancient times, and it was impossible to verify its authenticity. However, Ji Tianxing used his divine sense to investigate, and he could indeed sense that the lake of blood contained traces of demonic qi. Furthermore, his divine sense could extend out for 800 kilometers, and he could even investigate the situation in the depths of the lake. There were a few powerful life auras that seemed to be fluctuating. No wonder the surroundings of the lake are deathly still, and no birds or beasts dare to approach. There are fiendish demons at the Essence Soul Realm and Tribulation Transcendence Realm hidden in the Blood Lake. How would ordinary fiendish beasts dare to approach it? After roughly understanding the situation of the Fallen Blood Lake, Ji Tianxing began to search for the entrance to the Dual Saints' secret realm. In the message that Jiku had sent him, he had only said that the entrance to the Mystic Realm was near the Blood Lake. However, he did not specify its exact location. Ji Tianxing had no choice but to use the invisibility secret technique to remain invisible and continue flying north. He did not fly over the Blood Lake. Instead, he carried out a carpet search along the mountain range at the edge of the Blood Lake. Half an hour later he had flown over 3,000 li away. He had thoroughly searched the places he had passed by. In a deep canyon he discovered a group of martial artists. This team of warriors did not look like an adventurer team. Judging from their attire, they looked more like a martial arts organization from some divine nation. The leader was a black-robed old man with white hair and beard. His body was tall and sturdy, and he carried a broadsword as wide as a bench on his back. That person's strength had reached the 6th level of the Tribulation Passing Realm. Evidently, he was a martial lord who had been famous for many years. Following closely behind him were 4 middle-aged experts in purple robes. There were 3 men and 1 woman. The strength of these 4 experts was between the 2nd and 4th level of the Tribulation Transcendence Realm. A martial lord leading 4 experts in the Tribulation Transcendence Realm. This force is enough to support a first-rate sect in the 3 divine nations. They should have accurate information and know where the entrance to the mystic realm is. Ji Tianxing calculated for a moment, then quietly followed behind the group of martial artists and flew north of the Blood Lake. The facts proved that his guess was right. This group of martial artists seemed to have a target long ago. They had been rushing at full speed without stopping or searching the surroundings. In just half an hour, the 5 experts had flown over 4,000 li and arrived at the northern end of the Blood Lake. It was a towering mountain range that lay prone on the ground like a dragon. It stretched from east to west and no one knew how long it was. The 5 experts flew into the towering mountain range and landed on a steep lone peak. The lone peak seemed quiet, but in fact there were several experts hidden there. When the 5 experts landed in the forest at the peak of the mountain, 5 figures immediately appeared around them and joined them. The 5 new experts all had the strength of the Tribulation Transcendence realm, and the leader was also a martial lord. The 2 groups of people met and greeted each other. The 2 leading martial lords also gathered together to discuss matters. Ji Tianxing discovered that the clothes of the 10 Tribulation Transcendence realm experts were basically the same. The emblems and patterns on their lapels were also exactly the same. Obviously, these people belonged to the same martial arts organization. Ji Tianxing hid in the dark and observed and couldn't help but have a thought in his mind. Could it be that those people are from the Broken Sky Alliance? 10 Tribulation Transcendence realm experts and 2 of them are martial lords. Other than the Broken Sky Alliance, which sect has such power? Just as he was secretly guessing, the conversation of the 2 martial lords entered his ears. The white-haired old man with a pair of heavy swords on his back said to the other hunchbacked old man, "Old son, you arrived here first, so you should know the situation better, right?" The hunchbacked old man called Old Son stroked his beard and nodded with a smile. "Mu Wujuan, we set off from Baiji City at the same time, but I didn't expect you to be 2 days late. The Vanguard scouts have already found the entrance to the secret realm. It's said that the situation there is complicated and there are many forces entangled. After the branch leader heard the news, he brought people over last night. He was afraid that you wouldn't be able to find the place, so he told me to stay here and wait for you to come over." Mu Wujuan revealed a trace of a smile, stroked the pair of heavy swords on his back and said, "The branch leader is considerate. Old son, you're also very kind. After this mission is completed, I'll treat you to a drink when we return." Old Son stroked his beard and nodded with a smile. "I've been waiting for you to say that. All right, let's not waste any more time and hurry over to support. I reckon that the branch leader has already entered the secret realm and has already started to plunder the treasures, right?" Mu Wujuan revealed a face full of anticipation and said while rubbing his fists and palms, "Then we have to hurry over even more. Maybe we can still drink some soup. If we're late then." Old Son laughed loudly, clearly having the same thoughts as him. The 2 of them didn't waste any more time. They called out to the experts under them and quickly left the mountain peak, flying towards the north. After listening to the conversation between Old Son and Mu Wujuan, Ji Tianxing was basically sure that they were from the Broken Heaven Alliance. Thus, he hurriedly followed behind them and turned invisible. Everyone flew across the sky as fast as lightning, crossing mountain range after mountain range. Ji Tianxing could clearly feel that the spiritual qi in this world was 10 times denser than other places. Between the mountains there was a 5-colored spiritual qi, and above the forest, there was dense green with spiritual qi. After flying for about 3,000 miles, he could see from afar that there was a majestic mountain range in front of him that constantly lit up with colorful lights. Chapter 1962. When they were still 150 kilometers away, Ji Tianxing could already see the 5-colored light illuminating the sky. All kinds of Dharma spells flashed across the dark sky, accompanied by loud noises. Clearly, there was a group of experts fighting in that mountain range and the commotion was huge. Old Son, Mu Wujuan, and the others seemed to be used to this and did not find it strange at all. The 2 of them led the 8 experts under their command and flew into the mountain range. Ji Tianxing followed closely behind and soon arrived above the mountain range. There was a flat area with a radius of 100 kilometers at the peak of the mountain. It was full of grass and forests and the wood spirit qi was extremely rich. A 5-colored light barrier with a radius of 100 kilometers covered the entire area. Ji Tianxing used his divine sense to investigate and found that it was a supreme grade tribulation level defensive formation. In the depths of the formation, right next to the cliff, there was a gate that was over 30 meters tall, and was golden and blue in color. The oval-shaped door of light had a very strange shape. The door frame was covered with mysterious patterns, and the two doors were golden and icy blue respectively. Even though there was a layer of defensive formation, Ji Tianxing could feel that the two-colored door was emitting a majestic energy fluctuation. More than a dozen purple-robed tribulation passing stage powerhouses were surrounding the light gate, concentrating on using their secret technique. It seemed that they were working together to crack the door of light. Outside the defensive formation, more than 20 tribulation-level experts were guarding, and they all wore the same purple robes. Seeing this, Ji Tianxing immediately understood what was going on. The 30-meter-tall mysterious door of light should be the entrance to the Yin-Yang secret realm. The 40 purple-robed experts inside and outside the formation were all elites of the Broken Sky Alliance. The defensive formation with a radius of 100 kilometers was also set up by the Broken Sky Alliance. The Broken Sky Alliance had occupied this place and were trying to crack the entrance to the secret realm. No wonder Du Tiangang said that the Broken Sky Alliance was determined to get the secret realm. So that's why. Ji Tianxing sneered and looked up at the sky above the formation. In the dazzling sky, more than 20 tribulation-level experts were fighting fiercely. On one side there were 12 people wearing the same purple robes, and they were obviously the elites of the Broken Sky Alliance. On the other side there were only 10 people, but they were all tribulation-level experts. There were men and women in this group, and they were either middle-aged experts or white-haired elders. After observing for a moment, Ji Tianxing was able to determine that these 10 powerhouses were from some sect or force. After all, the techniques and moves of this group of people all had the same shadow. Their Dharma power aura contained the same characteristics. The two sides seemed to have been fighting for a long time. Most of the people were injured and looked quite miserable. However, the 12 elites of the Broken Sky Alliance clearly had the upper hand. The 10 experts of the Broken Sky Alliance would not be defeated soon. Ji Tianxing then looked around the great array and saw that in the nearby sky, there were more than 10 groups of experts in the mountains not far away. Those experts were in groups of 3 to 5. They were clearly separated and kept a distance from each other. They also maintained a vigilant posture. Obviously, they were from different forces. Some had more people and there were as many as a dozen experts. Some had fewer people and there were only 3 to 5 people. Ji Tianxing could tell that only a small part of the dozen experts were adventurers, and most of them were from sects and martial arts organizations. The dozen experts were scattered around, watching the battle above the Broken Sky Alliance, and had no intention of joining in. Ji Tianxing looked around and figured out the situation. The entrance to the Broken Sky Alliance's secret realm is here. All the forces have arrived and they are lurking around. However, it seems that the Broken Sky Alliance is the dominant force, and they have set up a Broken Sky Alliance to seal the entrance and prevent other forces from approaching. The entrance to the Broken Sky Alliance's secret realm is a door of light, which is obviously a saint-level formation. The people of the Broken Sky Alliance are all in the tribulation level, and there are no martial sages present, so they can't open the entrance to the Broken Sky Alliance for the time being. Since that was the case, Ji Tianxing was not in a hurry. He hid in the sky and observed the situation. At this moment, Old Man Sun and Mu Wujuan led 8 elites and landed outside the defensive Broken Sky Alliance. A burly man in golden armor and a dark green cloak walked out of the Broken Sky Alliance. Old Man Sun, Mu Wujuan, and the others bowed to this person and said something. The burly man was the Broken Sky Alliance's division leader. He was at the 8th level of the Tribulation Transcendence realm, and his aura was very powerful. He nodded slightly, waved his hand and gave an order. Old Man Sun, Mu Wujuan, and the others did not hesitate and immediately turned to fly into the sky. Everyone took out their Dharma treasures and weapons and joined the battle with a murderous aura. They attacked the 10 sect masters. The experts from the various sects were already overwhelmed and were forced to retreat step by step. After Mu Wujuan and the others joined in the battle, their situation became even more dangerous and they were quickly defeated. 3 experts were killed on the spot, and the remaining 7 were seriously injured and had to flee in different directions. More than 20 elites of the Heaven-Shattering Alliance began to aggressively pursue him. In the end, another 3 of the 7 sect experts were killed, and only 4 of them managed to escape with their lives. After 100 breaths of time, more than 20 Broken Sky Alliance elites returned to the Broken Sky Alliance. Under the command of the Broken Sky Alliance's division leader, 8 experts participated in breaking the Broken Sky Alliance's division leader, while the remaining dozen stayed outside the Broken Sky Alliance's division leader. Soon night fell and the world was covered in darkness. The surroundings of the mountain peak also calmed down. The dozen or so groups of experts watching the battle were all shocked by the Broken Sky Alliance's power and secretly discussed. Ji Tianxing used a secret technique and used his divine sense to eavesdrop on those people's discussions. Suddenly, all kinds of voices entered his mind. Sigh, I didn't expect that even the Overlord Sword Sect's experts would be defeated and end up in such a miserable state. What's so surprising about this? Although the Overlord Sword Sect is a first-rate sect, they only sent 10 experts. That's right. There are too many people from the Broken Sky Alliance. There are 50 people present now and all of them are at the Tribulation Transcendence realm. Including those who are not present, the number of experts from the Broken Sky Alliance is at least 70 to 80. Almost all the experts of the 100 Gathering City branch have been dispatched. Division leader Qin Haishan is really going all out. He's determined to win. But isn't the Broken Sky Alliance too domineering? They relied on their numbers and set up a formation to seal the entrance of the secret realm. They're not just domineering, they're simply too shameless. They're not giving us any chance at all. Even if they're domineering, what can we do? Are we going to be like the Overlord Sword Sect, provoking the Broken Sky Alliance's dignity and then being killed? I think that people from small sects like us should join forces to deal with the Broken Sky Alliance. There are already more than 20 forces gathered nearby. Our combined numbers are more than the Broken Sky Alliance. Forget it. Everyone came from all corners of the world, from all walks of life. How could they possibly work together? The Broken Sky Alliance knew this, which was why they dared to forcibly occupy the entrance of the secret realm without fear. For 3 whole days they had not been able to crack the entrance of the secret realm. Chapter 1963. Ji Tianxing listened for a full quarter of an hour. At least several hundred sentences were transmitted into his mind from all directions. The vast majority of people were filled with resentment, very dissatisfied with Broken Heaven Alliance's way of doing things, quite a bit of feeling of having a common enemy. Everyone took an enormous risk, crossing tens of thousands of miles through the divine ruins, and finally arrived at the entrance of the mystic realm with great difficulty. In the end, Broken Heaven Alliance occupied this place, not allowing them to approach at all. Otherwise they would be killed without mercy. Forget about exploring the mystic realm to search for treasures and seize the 2 saints' treasures and inheritances. They did not even have the qualifications to approach the entrance of the mystic realm. Everyone made a wasted trip. They could see the 2 saints' mystic realm but could not touch it. How could everyone not be depressed? How could they not vomit blood in anger? However, no matter how much they hated Broken Heaven Alliance, there was nothing they could do. They were alone and weak and it was chaotic. It was simply impossible to join forces to deal with Broken Heaven Alliance. Many powerhouses discussed for a long time and also did not think of a perfect solution. Witnessing Hegemon Sword Sect's miserable end with their own eyes, no one dared to take the initiative to stand up and wave flags and shout battle cries anymore. However, many powerhouses still harbored fantasies in their hearts. They incomparably hoped that a powerful martial saint would appear and beat Broken Heaven Alliance to a pulp. Even if that martial saint entered the mystic realm and monopolized the 2 saints' treasures and inheritances, they also had no complaints. As long as they did not let Broken Heaven Alliance succeed, it was fine. Being able to see Broken Heaven Alliance's people suffer, everyone would also feel gratified. At least they did not make a wasted trip. After a quarter of an hour, Ji Tianxing finished casting the art and withdrew his divine sense. The corners of his mouth curled into a hint of a playful smile, and he secretly sneered coldly. Broken Heaven Alliance has already aroused public anger. I'm afraid this time it's over. The 2 saints were powerhouses closest to Martial God Realm. How could the mystic realm where they passed away in closed-door meditation be so easy to crack? However, Cuckoo said that Ji Shilua will also come. I'll observe for a while more. If it doesn't work out, I can only take action. Ji Tianxing was very clear that Broken Heaven Alliance had already sealed this place for 3 days. A full 3 days passed, Broken Heaven Alliance still could not crack the Mystic Realm's entrance. Even if they were given a few more days, it was still impossible to succeed. Once Ji Shilua arrived with the devil race experts, all the experts present would have to step aside. Whether it was the 20 or so scattered factions or the Broken Heaven Alliance, which was the most powerful faction, none of them were a match for Ji Shilua. A single Saint Realm expert was enough to crush everyone present. By then, perhaps only Ji Shilua would be able to enter the arcane realm and plunder the treasures and inheritances of the two sages. Unknowingly, 6 hours had passed. It was early in the morning. The night was dark and the wind was chilly. The sky above the mountain peak was also covered by boundless dark clouds, making it impossible to see the stars and moonlight. The oppressive atmosphere enveloped everyone. Ji Tianxing was still hiding in the night sky, paying attention to the movements within the defensive formation. Xianxia and more than 20 heaven-shattering alliance elites were still busy trying to crack the entrance to the secret realm. Outside the formation, more than 20 elite experts were guarding it tightly. More than 20 experts from different forces were still scattered around the mountain peak and could only watch from afar. During this time, 2 more teams of martial artists arrived. These 2 teams came from different forces and there were about 10 of them each. Of course, there were only 2 or 3 Tribulation Transcendence experts in the teams, and the others were all in the Essence Soul realm. After these 2 teams arrived, they quickly understood the situation and did not dare to act rashly. At present, it seemed that the Broken Heaven Alliance was the dominant force and would definitely be the biggest winner. No matter how many people the other forces had, they could not compete with the Broken Heaven Alliance. The key point was when the Broken Heaven Alliance would be able to crack the entrance to the secret realm. Just as everyone was feeling helpless and depressed, Ji Tianxing finally appeared. Zhoush. His body lit up with a layer of hazy golden light, and he suddenly appeared in the night sky. He was dressed in a white robe and held a mysterious black sword. His face was handsome and heroic and his body was tall and slender, exuding a mysterious and powerful aura. When he appeared, more than 10 groups of experts around him all looked at him. Everyone's eyes lit up and they secretly praised him in their hearts. What a handsome, heroic and elegant white-robed young master. However, other than this thought, no one had any other thoughts. Many people glanced at him, then looked away and continued to look at the array on the mountain peak. In everyone's opinion, the appearance of this white-robed young master would not change anything, and it would not cause any waves. However, in the next moment everyone realized that they were wrong. Ji Tianxing actually stepped through the night sky and flew towards the mountain peak at a moderate speed, heading straight for the Broken Heaven Alliance's defensive array. He covered 1,000 feet with each step and his steps were as steady as a mountain. His aura was as powerful as the vast sea and he exuded strong confidence. Most importantly, he was acting alone. He was alone with a black sword and no other companions or helpers. Many experts around the mountain peak were immediately interested and looked at him in surprise. A wave of whispers sounded in the night sky. What is that guy trying to do? Is he going to challenge the Broken Heaven Alliance? Is he crazy? He's so young, but he has such an extraordinary aura. He actually dares to come here alone, so he must be extraordinary. So what if he's strong? There are at least 80 experts who died at the hands of the Broken Heaven Alliance, if not 100. Sigh, he's still young and impetuous and can't keep his composure. Such a reckless action won't accomplish anything great. Just as everyone was secretly discussing, Ji Tianxing had already flown to the mountain peak. He stopped about 10 miles away from the defensive array, and stood calmly in the night sky. 5 kilometers away, the elites of the Heaven-Shattering Alliance who were guarding the Great Formation immediately cast wary gazes at him. Mu Wujuan frowned and his face darkened. He led 2 purple-robed elites and flew towards Ji Tianxing. Kid, this place has been expropriated by the Broken Heaven Alliance. If you don't want to die, scram. As his voice fell, Mu Wujuan stopped 3,000 feet away from Ji Tianxing. He crossed his arms in front of his chest and looked at Ji Tianxing with an arrogant expression. The 2 purple-robed elites drew their swords and sabers, revealing strong killing intent towards Ji Tianxing. Facing the three's demonstration, Ji Tianxing was not angry and said expressionlessly, "You don't have the right to talk to me, let Xianxia come see me." His voice was calm and indifferent, but it was full of energy and contained an unquestionable domineering aura. His voice spread out and like a stone thrown into a lake, it stirred up layers of ripples. The dozen or so experts revealed shocked expressions, and looked at Ji Tianqing in disbelief. Mu Wujuan and the two purple-robed elites were stunned, thinking that they had heard wrongly. The three quickly reacted and revealed cold killing intent and cursed angrily. Kid, you're courting death. You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth, you're tired of living. Kill him. Following Mu Wujuan's order, the two purple-robed elites charged towards Ji Tianqing with their swords and sabers. Whoosh whoosh. Chapter 1964. Facing the pincer attack of two tribulation stage powerhouses, Ji Tianqing was still calm and collected. He didn't retreat half a step. Instead, he casually raised his right hand and sent out a palm strike. Heavenly Dragon Palm. A ball of dazzling silver flame shot out of his palm. Whoosh. That ball of violent star divine fire immediately condensed into a 300-meter-long silver flame dragon and shot towards the two elite powerhouses. At that moment, the silver flame dragon streaked across the night sky and illuminated a radius of several hundred miles. The resplendent silver light far surpassed the stars and moonlight. Bam! With a muffled explosion, a five-colored brilliance burst out and scattered in the night sky. The attacks of the two elite powerhouses were directly defeated by the silver flame dragon and fell apart. Then the silver flame dragon hit the two elite powerhouses. Both of them spat out blood and flew backwards with their bodies bent, smashing into the colorful defensive formation. Thump, thump. The two fell to the ground with a slight muffled sound and then fainted. However, these two muffled sounds were like two heavy hammers that fiercely struck everyone's hearts. Lord Mu Wujuan's expression changed on the spot. His eyes were filled with shock and anger. The dozen or so powerhouses watching the battle were also stunned. All of them revealed astonished expressions. No one dared to believe that this reckless and ignorant white-robed young master was actually this strong. A light palm strike was able to heavily injure two heaven-shattering alliance elites and knock them unconscious. What kind of strength was this? Perhaps only the heaven-shattering alliance's branch leader, Xianxia, had such ability. At the thought of this, many powerhouses were filled with excitement. Their hearts were filled with anticipation and fantasy. All kinds of discussions and exclamations rose one after another. I can't believe that guy's strength is so terrifying. No wonder he could come to Fallen Blood Lake alone and even dare to challenge the heaven-shattering alliance. We all misjudged him. Although this kid is young, his strength is unfathomable. If he can successfully challenge the heaven-shattering alliance, then we'll have a chance to share the spoils. Everyone, don't be too optimistic. He only casually took care of two small fries. The Broken Heaven Alliance has more than a dozen martial monarchs in Xianxia. He can't possibly succeed. For a time, many experts had different opinions. At this moment, Mu Wujuan could no longer hold back his anger and pulled out the two swords on his back. Brat, you dare to challenge our Broken Sky Alliance? You must be tired of living. Let me meet you. I want to see how capable you are. As he roared, Mu Wujuan's entire body burst into flames as he brandished his pair of broadswords and slashed out 18 times at Ji Tianqing. Swish. Swish. 18 flaming sword lights that were hundreds of meters long burst forth with destructive power and slashed toward Ji Tianqing. Hundreds of miles of the night sky was illuminated, and the violent and scorching heat waves forced the surrounding powerhouses to retreat. Ji Tianqing still stood in place, not retreating even half a step. He still did not draw his sword. Holding the sword of burial of heaven in her left hand, she raised her right hand and punched out. Star-shattering fist. A silver fist the size of a house smashed toward Mu Wujuan with the power of divine fire that could burn heaven and earth. Boom. With a shocking explosion, the 18 flaming swords were all shattered by the silver fist, splashing out a rain of fire. The silver fist's power and speed did not decrease in the slightest as it instantly hit Mu Wujuan. Bam! Mu Wujuan did not have time to dodge before he was sent flying. While he was still in the air, he opened his mouth and spat out a jet of dark red blood. Blood spurted out of his 7 orifices, his chest deeply caved in, and his entire body was twisted out of shape. After flying 10 miles away, he crashed into the defensive formation with a loud thud. His head tilted to one side and he fainted. Such a result instantly left everyone dumbfounded. There was complete silence around the mountain peak. Not a single sound could be heard. Whether it was the people of the Broken Sky Alliance or the powerhouses of the various factions, they all stared at Ji Tianqing with their mouths agape. They were so shocked that they could not speak. It was one thing for the two elites of the Broken Sky Alliance to be knocked unconscious by him. But Mu Wujuan was a martial lord who had been famous for many years, a powerhouse in the 6th stage of the tribulation stage. He was also defeated by a single punch and knocked unconscious. At this moment the same thought appeared in everyone's mind. How strong is that white-robed young master? Even Qin Haishan might not be able to do this. Could he be a martial saint powerhouse? Thinking of this, the people of the Broken Sky Alliance were filled with worry as they stared at Ji Tianqing with hostility. The powerhouses of the 20 factions were wild with joy, their hearts filled with excitement and anticipation. Many people could not help but cheer and applaud Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing, who was in the night sky, still looked indifferent. That domineering and invincible scene just now was shocking to everyone. To him it was just a matter of a snap of his fingers. He looked coldly at the defensive formation and said in a deep voice, "I'll say it one last time, tell Qin Haishan to come out and meet me." His deep and cold voice reverberated in the night sky, shaking everyone's hearts. The powerhouses of the various factions only felt that Ji Tianqing was incomparably domineering and were in awe of him. The people of the Broken Sky Alliance were filled with humiliation and righteous indignation. Inside the defensive formation, Qin Haishan, who was dressed in golden armor, stood majestically in the middle of the formation and stared coldly at Ji Tianqing. He had noticed Ji Tianqing when he appeared. However, he did not speak and only stared sharply at Ji Tianqing. He was the honorable division leader of the Broken Sky Alliance. How could he tolerate Ji Tianqing's arrogance in front of him? If he really went out to meet him, wouldn't he lose all face? Where would the Broken Sky Alliance's face go? At this moment, seeing the powerhouses of the various factions cheering, his face became even more gloomy. "Kill him." He swung his large cloak and waved his hand to give the order. The 20 or so elite powerhouses guarding outside the formation immediately took out their Dharma treasures and weapons. Everyone roared and rushed over, waving their Dharma treasures and weapons as they attacked Ji Tianqing. Only death awaited those who dared to provoke the Broken Sky Alliance. Whoosh 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 whoosh. The 20 or so powerhouses spread out and released their powerful Dharma spells. The sky was filled with Dharma spells and hundreds of sword and saber lights slashed down from the sky toward Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing was surrounded by so many powerhouses, but he did not panic in the face of danger. His body was still full of vigor. Clang! He finally drew the sword of burial of heaven. With his left hand behind his back, he waved the sacred sword with his right hand and slashed out a dazzling sword light. Big Dipper Sword. Shattering 7 stars with one strike. In that instant, the sword of burial of heaven released 49 silver sword lights, arranged in the Big Dipper Sword formation and spread out in all directions. Bam 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 bam. The 300-meter-long silver sword lights collided with the Dharma spells and caused an earth-shaking explosion that spread for hundreds of kilometers. All the sword lights and Dharma spells collapsed in an instant, turning into billions of light fragments that scattered in the night sky. The 20 or so elite powerhouses were all hit by the silver sword lights and were sent flying with blood spurting out of their bodies. Chapter 1965. Plop. Plop. More than 20 experts of the Broken Sky Alliance fell on the mountain peak in a sorry state, making muffled sounds. Almost everyone was covered in blood. They had at least 6 or 7 sword wounds and their wounds were charred black. The ordinary elite experts were unable to move after falling to the ground. They either fainted or struggled on the ground and screamed. Only the 7 martial monarchs in the 5th and 6th stages of the Tribulation Transcendence realm could still remain conscious. They struggled to stand up with their injuries. Seeing this scene, the experts around the mountain peak all revealed looks of shock. Many people opened their mouths silently and widened their eyes in shock. After a long time, the crowd burst out in exclamations. Heavens! That white-robed young master's strength is actually so strong. This is too terrifying. This is definitely not something a tribulation stage expert can do. He must be a martial saint. One person facing more than 20 tribulation stage experts, and he could even seriously injure everyone with one move. If he wasn't a martial saint expert, I would have killed myself here. No wonder he was so confident and dared to challenge the Broken Sky Alliance alone. No wonder he clamored and called out Qin Haishan's name. No wonder his aura is as vast as the heavens and earth, making it impossible for people to see through him. The Broken Sky Alliance is too domineering. Finally, a martial saint expert is going to teach them a lesson. Tonight, the Broken Sky Alliance has fallen. This is so satisfying. The experts of more than 20 forces were all inexplicably excited as they discussed excitedly. At this moment there was another change on the mountain peak. More than 10 purple-robed elites were lying on the grass in disorder. The remaining 7 martial lords tenaciously picked up their swords and sabers, and their bodies lit up with the brilliance of magic power. For the Broken Sky Alliance. For our honor. For branch leader Qin. We would rather die than submit. Kill. Angry shouts rang out, containing a firm and unyielding will. The 7 martial lords brandished their weapons again and charged at Ji Tianqing without any regard for their own safety. Soon they arrived in front of Ji Tianqing and were only 1,000 feet away from him. Another round of fierce battle was about to break out. But at this moment, a cold, angry shout came from the defensive formation. Stop. This dignified voice naturally came from Qin Haishan's mouth. When the 7 martial lords heard the order, they all stopped in unison and stopped their attacks. Then, everyone's eyes gathered on Qin Haishan. Qin Haishan's face was as dark as the bottom of a pot, and his eyes were as cold as ice. He stepped out of the defensive formation and came to the night sky outside the formation. He stood 10,000 feet away from Ji Tianqing. He looked at Ji Tianqing with a complex expression and asked in a low and deep voice, "You are so young and yet you possess such terrifying strength. I truly admire you. However, our Broken Sky Alliance has no enmity with you, so why would you kill us?" Although Qin Haishan was furious and wanted nothing more than to tear Ji Tianqing into pieces. However, as the branch leader he was in charge of hundreds of tribulation stage powerhouses. He was extremely scheming and shrewd. He suppressed his anger and questioned Ji Tianqing sternly in the name of the heaven-shattering alliance. Ji Tianqing looked at him expressionlessly and said calmly, "That's right, we have no enmity with you. As for killing them, that's not the case. Your subordinates were only knocked unconscious. If I really wanted to kill them, they would have been corpses long ago." Qin Haishan was startled for a moment. He secretly released his divine sense to cover the mountain peak and checked everyone's injuries. The situation was just as Ji Tianqing said. More than 20 powerhouses were seriously injured and most of them were knocked unconscious. However, no one died. This result showed that the other party did not have any killing intent, and it was enough to prove that the other party's strength was unfathomable. It was easy to kill someone, but it was more difficult to knock someone unconscious without killing them. Qin Haishan understood this and became more and more afraid of Ji Tianqing. He frowned and asked in a low voice, "Then why are you enemies with our Broken Sky Alliance?" Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and asked in a contemptuous tone, "Enemies with the Broken Sky Alliance? If I really had such intentions, the Broken Sky Alliance would have ceased to exist long ago." "You." Qin Haishan was so angry that his face turned green. He gritted his teeth and shouted, "Young man, you really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. My subordinates and I are just a branch in Baiji City. The Broken Sky Alliance has 100,000 powerhouses and many martial sages. Even a martial god would not dare to underestimate us." Before he could finish, Ji Tianqing grinned coldly and said, Even if Wu Duantian were here, he would not dare to be presumptuous in front of me, and he would not dare to boast like you." Qin Haishan's body stiffened when he heard the 3 words Wu Duantian. His eyes stared deadly at Ji Tianqing, revealing deep respect and fear. For a moment he was speechless. This was because Wu Duantian was the founder of the Broken Sky Alliance. After the Yin-Yang saints and Kenshin, he was known as the most powerful martial sage and was the closest to becoming a martial god. For almost 1,000 years, Wu Duantian had handed over the affairs of the alliance to a few elders while he cultivated in seclusion and did not show himself. There were rumors that Wu Duantian had reached the limit of a martial sage and was trying to break through to the martial god realm. There were even rumors that Wu Duantian had broken through the mysteries of heaven and was half a step into the martial god realm. All in all, Wu Duantian was an absolute legend in the Shenwu continent. His reputation was second only to the Yin-Yang saints. Qin Haishan was extremely respectful towards alliance leader Wu Duantian. The white-robed youth in front of him dared to call out Wu Duantian's name directly and even said such arrogant words. Qin Haishan was naturally furious and only wanted to hack this person to death for blaspheming the alliance leader. However, Qin Haishan was not stupid. He could see that Ji Tianqing was not lying. His gaze, aura and spirit undulations were all normal. This meant that Ji Tianqing knew Wu Duantian. Moreover, the relationship between the two of them was somewhat subtle. Qin Haishan frowned and quickly weighed the pros and cons in his heart. He was not a hothead, so he would not fly into a rage and fight Ji Tianqing. He did not need to guess to know the result. But for him to put down his pride and grovel in front of Ji Tianqing? That was not realistic. After all, there were so many powerhouses watching and he could not afford to lose face. For a moment, Qin Haishan was silent with a complicated expression, not knowing how to respond. Fortunately, Ji Tianqing was the first to speak and break the awkwardness. Qin Haishan, your status is too low to know about the matters between me and Wu Duantian. You only need to know that I am not here to kill you, but to save you. Qin Haishan was stunned for a moment and revealed a puzzled expression. He subconsciously asked, Senior, may I ask, what do you mean by this? His attitude towards Ji Tianqing had quietly changed. Chapter 1966. Qin Haishan's change in attitude shocked everyone. 10 breaths ago he was still the high and mighty division leader of the Broken Sky Alliance. But now he was extremely respectful to Ji Tianqing. Not only were the experts around the mountain dumbfounded, but even the 20 or so elites of the Heaven-Shattering Alliance in the defensive formation were also stunned. However, no one dared to laugh at Qin Haishan and no one would think that he was spineless. Facing a mysterious martial saint expert who was on par with Wu Duantian, no one dared to act rashly. Ji Tianqing looked at Qin Haishan and said calmly, although the Broken Sky Alliance is powerful, a tall tree attracts the wind. You'll definitely attract the hatred of everyone by blocking the entrance of the secret realm. In a short period of time, you can rely on your numbers to suppress the experts. However, if you're careless in the slightest, then the various powers will definitely seize the opportunity to counterattack and kick you while you're down, causing your death. Qin Haishan fell silent when he heard this. He understood the logic behind it. However, he was too confident that no force could challenge the Broken Sky Alliance, so he dared to be fearless. The experts around the mountain all agreed with Ji Tianqing's words. Some people nodded repeatedly, some echoed loudly, and some even applauded and flattered Ji Tianqing. Qin Haishan's expression became more and more ugly and he was deeply worried. Previously he had 50 elites under his command and was not afraid of the other forces. Now half of the elites were severely injured. He could not help but worry that the experts of the other forces might join forces to deal with him. Therefore he cupped his hands towards Ji Tianqing and asked, Senior, I understand what you're saying, but how do you plan to save me? Ji Tianqing said without changing his expression, It's very simple. You should understand the principle of letting things go rather than blocking them, right? You've occupied the entrance of the secret realm and 3 days have passed, but you haven't been able to break the formation at the entrance. Instead, you've angered everyone. Instead of that, why don't you gather all the capable people and join forces to break the formation? Whoever can break the formation will be qualified to enter the secret realm. This. Qin Haishan instantly fell into hesitation and he frowned as he weighed the pros and cons. The experts around the mountain all cheered excitedly, all of them cheering in agreement. Yes, this senior is absolutely right. That's exactly what we think. This senior is the one who is reasonable. As expected of a senior expert. Not only did he not bully the weak, he even upheld justice for us. We didn't come here in vain this time. To be able to see such a graceful and outstanding senior, this trip was not in vain. We all agree with this senior's suggestion. Everyone has gone through so much to come here. Everyone should have a chance to try it. That's right. As long as you let us try to break the formation, regardless of whether we can enter the secret realm or not, we have no complaints. The experts of the various forces were very astute and hurriedly took advantage of the situation to kick up a fuss. They might not have much respect for Ji Tianqing. However, at this juncture they could only support Ji Tianqing and use his name as a shield. Qin Haishan heard the shouts of various experts, and under the pressure of Ji Tianqing, he had no choice but to nod and agree. Alright. Since Senior and the leader of our alliance are old friends, I will listen to Senior's advice. He cupped his fists at Ji Tianqing and used his divine sense to ask, Senior, there are too many people here. It is inconvenient for you to reveal your identity. I can understand. However, I have to bear a great responsibility for making this decision. I hope that Senior can take out a token or some evidence to prove that you are friends with the leader. After saying that, he was afraid of angering Ji Tianqing and hurriedly explained, Of course, Senior, please don't misunderstand. It's not that I don't believe you. I just need an explanation. If the leader asks about it in the future, I can answer to him. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly to show that he understood. He frowned and pondered for a moment before saying, Remember my appearance and attire. If Wu Duantian asks about it in the future, just tell him the truth. If he asks, you only need to say one sentence and he will understand. What sentence? Qin Haishan looked expectant. Ji Tianqing's eyes flashed with a strange smile and said calmly, Holy shit, I missed again. Qin Haishan was stunned and his eyes widened in shock. At that moment he thought that he had heard wrongly and was hallucinating. If it wasn't for Ji Tianqing's mysterious background and powerful strength, he really wanted to slap Ji Tianqing and make him say it again. However, this thought flashed in his mind and he did not dare to stay. After being stunned for a while, he asked hesitantly, Senior, are you joking with me? Ji Tianqing furrowed his brows as a formless pressure burst out from his body, pressing down on him like an avalanche. Do I look like I'm joking with you? Qin Haishan was shocked by his pressure and his whole body fell into an ice cellar. He bowed in fear and said, Senior, please calm down. I have offended you. In the future, if the alliance leader asks, I will tell you the truth. Ji Tianqing nodded, showing an expression that said, This child is worth teaching. Qin Haishan didn't dare to talk to him anymore. He quickly flew up into the sky, looked around and announced with a voice as loud as a bell, Heroes from all walks of life, I Qin Haishan am here to announce something. According to this senior's suggestion, I have decided to allow everyone to recommend themselves to break the entrance of the Mystery Land with the Alliance. However, in order to save everyone's time, only powerhouses who are above the third stage of the Tribulation Crossing realm and who are proficient in array formations are qualified to try. In addition, out of respect for this senior, he will try to break the array formation first. Those who are qualified to try to break the array formation can register with Deacon Wu. As his voice spread in the night sky, the powerhouses of more than 20 forces started to whisper to each other. Everyone knew that Qin Haishan was willing to compromise because of Ji Tianqing. It was not easy for him to do so. Therefore, everyone could accept Qin Haishan's request and had no objections. 10 powerhouses who met the conditions quickly flew out and came to the peak of the mountain. A tall and thin old man with white hair and beard flew out from the defensive array formation. This person was Deacon Wu, Qin Haishan's subordinate. He came outside the defensive array formation and registered the 10 powerhouses. Qin Haishan led Ji Tianqing and flew into the defensive array formation. Senior, please go first. Ji Tianqing did not stand on ceremony. He swaggered into the defensive array formation and flew towards the Mystery Land's entrance first. Qin Haishan followed behind him. He was depressed and nervous, but he could only maintain a respectful attitude. When Ji Tianqing flew to the Mystery Land's entrance and landed under the dual-colored light door, more than 20 powerhouses of the Broken Heaven Alliance consciously retreated. Chapter 1967. Ji Tianqing could tell at a glance that the golden and blue oval-shaped door was a top-notch holy array. Only a martial saint would be able to break it. Although he had not reached the martial sage realm, he was once the king of all deities in the galaxy. The memories in the depths of his soul contained the secret skills of the universe. It was all-encompassing. He was well-versed in everything from the Supreme Being skills to the martial sage secret skills. As for the secret skills below the martial sage realm, they were too low-level. He was not interested in them and could not be bothered to remember them. 10,000 divine eyes. Ji Tianqing shouted in his heart and secretly used the divine eyes secret skill. His eyes immediately turned golden. What was the 10,000 divine eyes? In just a single glance, his divine sense spread out, allowing him to see everything clearly. What was the divine eyes? It could see through all obstacles and disguises and see through the essence of things. The oval-shaped door immediately changed its appearance in Ji Tianqing's eyes. It turned into a grayish-white door frame that was 10 feet tall and there were tens of thousands of hair-like thin lines passing through it. Every thin line was a rune of the array. The tens of thousands of runes crossed each other and formed a complicated network that formed a top-notch holy array. If an ordinary person looked at the runes a few more times, they would feel dizzy and their consciousness would become blurry. It would be impossible to break it. However, Ji Tianqing's 10,000 divine eyes was different. He only took 2 glances and he was able to understand the tens of thousands of runes of the array. Then he used his powerful spiritual consciousness to analyze and deduce the runes of the array. He stood still in front of the door and stared at the door. There were tens of thousands of thoughts flashing through his mind. In a short few minutes he had already made over 1,000 deductions of the array. Each deduction required hundreds of thousands of calculations and simulations. After all, the tens of thousands of runes of the array were very complicated. Any change in any of the runes would affect the entire array. Such a huge amount of calculation, and to complete 1,000 calculations in half a quarter of an hour, it was truly shocking. It required a powerful spiritual consciousness to support it, and ordinary martial sages would not be able to do it. By the time Ji Tianqing had deduced it more than 900 times, he had already found a way to break it. However, he continued to deduce it dozens of times. After repeated demonstrations and experiments, he succeeded more than 20 times. Reality proved that he had indeed grasped the method to break it. Only then did he stop casting the spell, and his golden eyes gradually returned to their normal color. It really is the heavenly ice and fire formation. 3,000 years ago, Supreme Sage Tiandu's unique technique had once trapped more than 10 martial sages. No one had been able to break free from it. I don't know where the Yin-Yang saints got the opportunity to master such a consummate skill. It's really surprising. These thoughts flashed through Ji Tianqing's mind, and the corners of his mouth curved into a smile. Xianxia and more than 20 heaven-shattering alliance elites were standing not far behind him. Even though no one knew what he was doing, he only saw him standing in the same place, motionless for a quarter of an hour. However, no one dared to disturb him and no one dared to show any signs of impatience. Seeing that Ji Tianqing had stopped cultivating, the mysterious aura around him quickly dissipated. Xianxia then asked probingly, "Senior, how is it? Can you tell what kind of formation it is?" Ji Tianqing said calmly, "Of course." Xianxia's eyes flickered with great anticipation as he asked, "Then senior, you should be able to break free from this formation, right?" Ji Tianqing did not say anything. He only glanced at him. His confident and calm gaze had explained everything. He turned around and glanced at the 2-colored light door. He raised his palms and fired golden rays into the light door. His hands moved faster and the hand seals he performed became more obscure. It was obvious that he had begun to break free from the formation. Seeing this, Xianxia's heartbeat quickened. He stared at Ji Tianqing with a fiery gaze, his heart filled with anticipation and desire. "This is great. The formation at the entrance of the mystical ground is obviously a sacred formation. Only a martial sacred realm expert can break free from it. We've been busy for a few days but we still can't break free from it. It'll be great if this guy can do it. Since he's friends with the alliance leader, we'll have someone to rely on. We won't have to worry about being attacked by other forces." Xianxia calculated in his mind. He was even fantasizing about how he would plunder the treasures and inheritances after entering the Yin-Yang mystical ground. The 20 or so elites of the Heaven-Shattering Alliance were also looking forward to it. They discussed secretly with each other through voice transmission. As for the experts outside the formation, they could only wait silently. Even if Ji Tianqing could break free from the entrance of the mystical ground, they would still have to wait in line. The first to enter the mystical ground would definitely be Ji Tianqing and the Heaven-Shattering Alliance. They could only wait until the end. Unknowingly, an hour had passed. Ji Tianqing continued to perform hand seals, shooting rays of light into the light door. The golden and blue oval-shaped light door also flickered with a dazzling light as it underwent subtle changes. Finally, when Ji Tianqing performed the last hand seal, the dazzling light of the oval-shaped light door gradually dimmed. Swoosh! 2 doors, one gold and one blue, slowly opened to reveal a white gap. Behind the door was a vast expanse of white light. Nothing could be seen clearly, as if it led to an alternate dimension. A mysterious and vast aura emanated from the light door. Seeing the doors open and sensing the boundless aura, everyone looked incredibly excited. Xianxia, the 20 or so elites of the Heaven-Shattering Alliance, and the experts of other forces all cheered excitedly. Only Ji Tianqing was calm as he walked toward the light door. Qin Haishan was startled and quickly shouted, "Senior, you." Ji Tianqing stopped and turned around to look at him. With an indifferent face he said, "What? Do you want to go first?" Qin Haishan only wanted to ask him, were they going to go in just like that? Weren't they going to make any preparations? Seeing Ji Tianqing's displeasure, he quickly waved his hand and explained with a smile, "No, no, no. That's not what I meant. How would I dare to go before you? What I meant was, please go first. I'll follow you later." Hearing that, an imperceptible sneer flashed through Ji Tianqing's eyes. He turned and walked toward the light door. He stepped into the white light and his figure quickly disappeared. Qin Haishan quickly called out the names of a few martial lords and ordered, "You guys follow me into the secret realm. The rest of you stay here and don't let anyone in." A few elites were stunned and asked with puzzlement, "Branch Master, didn't you say before that the people of other forces were allowed to?" Qin Haishan frowned and shouted, "What I said was that they were allowed to try to break the formation. Now that the formation has been broken by you, those people didn't do anything. What right do they have to enter the secret realm?" Only then did everyone come to a realization. They all raised their spirits and guarded the entrance of the secret realm with their weapons. Qin Haishan led the 6 martial lords and quickly ran toward the dual-colored light door. However, what he didn't expect was... Chapter 1968. Qin Haishan was dumbfounded on the spot. The 6 martial monarchs also stopped and stared at the entrance of the secret realm with their mouths agape. No one expected that the originally open door would close at this moment. Was this a coincidence? Did the entrance of the secret realm close by itself? Or did that white-robed senior do it on purpose? No one knew the answer. Qin Haishan frowned and his face became extremely ugly. The 6 martial monarchs also looked at each other and secretly discussed. How could this be? The door actually closed? It shouldn't be that senior who did it, right? He doesn't look like a treacherous villain. It's hard to say. That senior doesn't look like a villain, but he doesn't look like a good person either. What should we do? Only that senior went in and we rejoiced for nothing. Everyone's discussion and worry made Qin Haishan quite irritated. However, he kept his cool and said expressionlessly, "Everyone, don't worry. That senior has already broken the formation. Even if the door is closed, we can open it again. Old son, go open the door." Hearing the order, a hunchbacked old man walked out of the crowd and carefully walked towards the door of light. Standing in front of the dual-colored door of light, Old Sun raised his palms and released his magic power to form 2 huge palms, pushing towards the door of light. Bang bang. Following 2 muffled sounds, the golden and blue door immediately exploded with a dazzling brilliance. The dark golden flames and the icy blue flames exploded like a mushroom cloud, releasing a destructive power. Boom. A thunderous explosion sounded and a scorching and icy wave of air swept out in all directions. The first to suffer was of course Old Sun, who was the closest. He was swept up by the golden and blue waves of air and flew out with blood spurting out of his 7 orifices. He fainted on the spot. When he was thrown 10 miles away and smashed onto the ground of the mountain peak, his body was already dripping with blood. Half of his body was burned by the heavenly ice fire. It was a mess of flesh and blood, revealing his white bones. He looked particularly miserable. Qin Haishan and the 5 martial monarchs were slightly further away from the door of light. When the accident happened, everyone realized that something was wrong and had already started to run. Although they couldn't avoid the impact of the air wave and were all sent flying, their situation was much better. However, their fates were much better. They were only shaken to the point of vomiting blood, and their bodies were not burned. Plop plop. Qin Haishan and the others fell all around, smashing into the ground like dumplings, emitting waves of miserable screams. This scene caused the hearts of the various experts to palpitate in fear and trepidation. Of course, while everyone was shocked, they were also gloating in their hearts. There were even some people who couldn't help but laugh and reveal mocking expressions. Qin Haishan's injuries were the lightest. He got up from the ground first and cursed furiously. "Damn bastard. I'm so angry." His face was as black as the bottom of a pot, and his eyes were as gloomy as ice. His entire body emitted a terrifying killing intent. At this point he'd already started to suspect exactly what intentions did that white-robed senior have? Were they really not targeting the Broken Heaven Alliance on purpose? Before that person appeared, the Heaven-Shattering Alliance was the dominant force, dominating the entrance to the secret realm. All the tyrants were furious, but they did not dare to say anything. No one dared to stand out and resist. However, after that person appeared, he first severely injured more than 20 of the Heaven-Shattering Alliance's elites, then broke the formation at the entrance of the secret realm. However, he could only suppress his anger and be respectful to that person. Now that person had entered the Yin-Yang secret realm, but the Heaven-Shattering Alliance suffered heavy casualties and could not even enter the entrance. Qin Haishan's heart was filled with grievances and anger. He looked around and saw the heavily injured elites. There were more than 30 of them, and they were all meditating and recuperating in the formation. Only a dozen of them were not injured and still had the ability to fight. The Heaven-Shattering Alliance had lost more than half of its men, and was no longer as powerful as before. The various tyrants outside the formation even dared to mock him to his face. Qin Haishan was trembling with anger, but there was nothing he could do. He could only suppress his anger and order in a deep voice. All the injured people stay in the formation and meditate to heal. Those who are not injured stand guard outside the formation and wait for my orders. Everyone replied in unison and immediately got to work. Then Qin Haishan took out a communication jade slip from his interspatial ring and entered a message in it. Whoosh! The communication jade turned into a ray of light and flew into the night sky, quickly disappearing. Qin Haishan looked up at the night sky and muttered to himself, "Although we can't break through the secret realm's entrance, the patrol envoy can definitely do it." When the patrol envoy arrives, the white-robed young man's identity will be revealed immediately. In the Heaven-Shattering Alliance, the alliance leader Wu Duantian had the highest status. After him were the 6 respected elders, all of whom were martial sages who had been famous for a long time. The elders were usually at the alliance headquarters and would only act when something big happened. Below the elders there were 12 patrol envoys, all of whom had just entered the martial sage realm. Usually the 12 patrol envoys would patrol the various branches. A month ago, patrol envoy Tianshang had sent a message to Qin Haishan, saying that he was going to 100 Gathering City to patrol. When Qin Haishan had just received news of the Yin-Yang secret realm, he had reported it to Tianshang. Tianshang had ordered him to bring his men into the ruins of deity, find the entrance of the secret realm and seal it. The Heaven-Shattering Alliance was determined to obtain the treasures in the Yin-Yang secret realm, and no one could take them away. Tianshang had also increased his speed and rushed over to meet up with the rest. Because of this, Qin Haishan had brought his men to the entrance of the secret realm and acted in such a domineering manner. Now that things had developed to this stage, Qin Haishan was furious and helpless. He could only hope that patrol envoy Tianshang would arrive as soon as possible. At the same time, Ji Tianxing was flying over a vast mountain range. He was surrounded by rolling mountains and dark green forests. At the foot of each mountain, there was a large river that looked like a jade belt. Between heaven and earth, there was an endless amount of spiritual qi, and it was a picturesque scene. However, the strange thing was that there were 2 suns in the blue sky. In other words, there was a dark golden sun and an icy blue moon. Faint golden and blue light shone down from the sky, covering the land with a layer of mysterious light. It was obvious that this was the Yin-Yang secret realm, an alternate space that was isolated from the rest of the world. In the past 4 hours, Ji Tianxing had already checked this place. This alternate space was a small world with a radius of 30,000 miles. It was as big as a few kingdoms in the secular world, and it could contain tens of millions of martial artists and living beings. However, other than various powerful demonic beasts, there were no traces of humans in the small world. He could roughly guess that the Yin-Yang sages had lived in seclusion here, and they did not want to be disturbed by others. They lived a blissful life that only the Yin-Yang sages would envy. Chapter 1969. There were more than 100,000 flying birds and demonic beasts in the Yin-Yang secret realm. Groups of spirit cranes and spirit birds could be seen flying in the sky. Between the mountains and the earth, there were also many gigantic demonic beasts that were cruising slowly. Obviously, this small world had become a paradise for flying birds and demonic beasts. When Ji Tianxing flew over the mountains, many spirit cranes and birds noticed him. Those spirit cranes and spirit birds were gentle and had a certain level of intelligence. They only looked at Ji Tianqing from afar and did not dare to get too close to him, nor did they have any intention to attack. Even the demonic beasts on the mountains and earth only looked up at him, revealing a puzzled and scrutinizing look. Of course, most of the demonic beasts were gentle, but there were some powerful demonic beasts that were more violent. A few Tribulation Realm wild rhinos, fire lions, and thunderbirds locked onto Ji Tianqing's aura and rushed over excitedly. These demonic beasts were powerful and were the overlords of their respective territories. They were violent and warlike, but it was hard to find a worthy opponent. Now that they met Ji Tianqing, an intruder, they naturally chased after him relentlessly. Ji Tianqing did not bother to tangle with them to avoid wasting time, so he performed the Armillary Heaven secret technique and merged with heaven and earth. His figure disappeared and his aura merged with heaven and earth, leaving no trace behind. Those demonic beasts immediately lost their target and flew around like headless flies, finally fighting each other. Ji Tianqing quietly flew over the mountains and into the depths of the mountain range. At this moment, Burial of Heaven's voice suddenly sounded in his mind, asking in confusion, "I've been thinking for a long time, but I can't remember how you and Wu Duantian met? Logically speaking, he's only the leader of the martial arts union. He's not qualified to be friends with you." Ji Tianqing was stunned and could not help but laugh, asking, "No wonder you didn't say anything along the way, so you're still thinking about this?" "Yes." Buried Heaven grunted in response and said calmly, "I see that you're speaking with such certainty and seriousness, but I don't have any recollection of it." Ji Tianqing chuckled and said, "Do you think I'm deliberately deceiving Qin Haishan? Actually, that's not the case. I really do know Wu Duantian. Back then, I opened a training ground at the peak of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains and declared that I would challenge all the martial saints in the world. In the past 10 years, the challengers were all young martial sages and most of them were below the rank 8 martial sage realm. Until the 19th year. I remember it was a summer night. There was a bearded man who was as strong as a bear and carried a long spear up Tianzhu mountain. This person was Wu Duantian, a boorish, bold and unrestrained person, yet he had a genuine temperament. He swaggered in, completely ignoring the rules and etiquette of the Pillar of Heaven's mountains. He forced his way into the training hall and challenged me by name. Those elders who tried to stop him were all beaten up by him. Huang Long hurriedly came to report to me, and I rushed to the training ground to fight with Wu Duantian in front of everyone. That Wu Duantian was one of the best among the martial saints. He was proud and arrogant and was rather conceited. Before the fight started, he already said that he would defeat me in 3 moves and tear down my Pillar of Heaven's mountain signboard. Burial of Heaven's interest was piqued and he asked playfully, "Oh? There was such a thing? Why didn't I know about it?" Ji Tianqing explained, "At that time, you were cultivating in the Star Divine Furnace. Naturally you didn't know about it." That's right, what did you say to Qin Haishan mean?" Burial of Heaven was enlightened, and he continued to listen attentively. Ji Tianqing continued, "Wu Duantian did have some real skills. The moment he attacked, he used a secret technique, summoning 9 streaks of black void fire to kill me. However, I purposely wanted to dampen his spirit. I didn't want to face him head-on, so I executed a technique to avoid his attack. He was stunned at that time and he even looked at the night sky in a daze. He shouted, 'How can I miss?' He didn't believe it and exploded with all his strength, summoning 18 streaks of black void fire to form a sword array to attack me. I used the illusory space secret technique, and although it looked like I was standing at my original spot, I had actually escaped into another space. The 18 streaks of black void fire missed again. Wu Duantian was completely dumbfounded and he cursed with a particularly interesting expression. 'Holy shit, I missed again.' Ji Tianqing explained in detail and Burial of Heaven listened with great interest and he couldn't help but laugh. However, he was the soul of the Holy Sword, the future Holy Sword. Of course, he had to maintain a serious expression and immediately stopped. Ji Tianqing also revealed a face full of smiles and couldn't help but say, Huang Long and the other elders could see that I had easily dodged Wu Duantian's secret technique. However, that Wu Duantian was too confident and his brain was too stubborn. He thought that he had missed his attack and didn't think that I could dodge it. When he flew into a rage out of humiliation and used his 3rd attack, I stopped teasing him and defeated him with a move of the God-slaying sword. Only then did Wu Duantian come to his senses, and he was immediately convinced by me. he respectfully bowed and apologized. Even those elders who were injured by him, he apologized one by one and compensated them with a large sum of spirit stones and elixirs. After saying this, the smile on Ji Tianqing's face gradually disappeared and he said with a sigh, "Now that I think about it, this matter seems like it just happened yesterday. Who would have thought that in the blink of an eye, 1,000 years have passed and things have changed? Wu Duantian is still the alliance leader of the Broken Sky Alliance, but he has just advanced from the rank 8 Martial Sage realm to the rank 9 Martial Sage realm. However, I have already gone through a reincarnation cycle and am reborn again." Burial of Heaven didn't feel much and said calmly, "This is the difference between a genius and a mediocre person." Ji Tianqing didn't say anything and thought to himself that he might be able to see Wu Duantian again soon. He was very curious, was the current Wu Duantian still as stubborn as he was in the past? Very quickly an hour passed. Ji Tianqing crossed hundreds of mountain peaks and arrived at the deepest part of the mountain range. He saw that at the end of the horizon, there was a towering mountain peak that was 10,000 meters tall, standing tall among the mountains. It seemed to be a lone peak, standing straight and tall, indomitable and out of place with the surrounding mountains. Looking from afar, he could only see a hazy shadow, and it seemed to be emitting a faint golden light. Ji Tianqing took a few more glances and felt puzzled. That mountain peak seems a little strange. Even if it's a lone peak, it can't be so straight and steep and equally thick. With a heart full of doubts, he sped up and flew over. Not long after, when he arrived near the giant peak, he realized that it wasn't a 10,000-meter tall peak. Instead, it was a dark golden giant pagoda. What an indomitable, majestic golden pagoda. The pagoda was 3,000 feet tall and covered an area of 50 miles, and its surface was filled with traces of ancient vicissitudes. The pagoda had a total of 9 floors, and the pagoda was octagonal with glazed cornices inlaid with pearls, and the design was very simple and grand. Ji Tianqing knew at a glance that this pagoda had been around for at least 10,000 years, and was obviously not a product of the modern era. The pagoda exuded a mysterious aura, as if it was connected to heaven and earth and contained some kind of truth. This was definitely not a treasure that the Yin-Yang dual sages could refine. Chapter 1970. Below the Golden Pagoda was a flat land with a radius of 50 miles. The ground was paved with green jade slabs and there was a white jade fence built around it. A simple but not simple formation shrouded the flat land, forming an invisible barrier. The fallen leaves from the surrounding mountains, the rolling gravel and the streams and rivers were all blocked outside. Ji Tianqing could see that the green jade slabs, the white jade fence and the defensive formation were not part of the pagoda. They were most likely set up by the Yin-Yang saints. Moreover, in the corner of the white jade there was a small peach forest. Rows of peach trees were next to each other, blooming with brilliant peach blossoms. A gentle breeze blew and pink petals fell to the ground, accompanied by a delicate fragrance. The Yin-Yang saints are quite romantic, planting a peach blossom field under the pagoda. There must be some kind of pledge of eternal love and romantic agreement in this, right? As this thought flashed through his mind, Ji Tianqing's lips curled into a smile. He stepped over the white jade fence, stepped over the green jade slabs and walked toward the golden pagoda. There was only one gate in the entire pagoda, and it was used as the entrance and exit, not far in front of Ji Tianqing. The dark golden gate was 10 feet tall and 3 feet wide. There was a golden dragon carved on the left gate and a fire phoenix on the right gate. The dragon and phoenix were lifelike, and even after thousands of years, they still had a sense of spirituality and majesty. Above the door frame, there were 4 ancient seal characters engraved in flamboyant calligraphy. Ji Tianqing took a closer look, and only then did he recognize the 4 words, Jiutian Shuluo. Jiutian Shuluo Pagoda? Ji Tianqing frowned, thinking that this name was quite unfamiliar. Back in the upper realm, I only heard that the demons had a divine codex that recorded the best of each race, and it was called the 10 Ultimate Divine Codex. Among them were the Dragon God Secret Technique, the Phoenix Nirvana Secret Technique, the Heavenly Wolf Moonswallowing Technique, and so on. I wonder if this Jiutian Shuluo Pagoda has anything to do with the demons of the upper realm? This was just his guess, and he did not dare to be sure. Then he used the 10,000 divine thoughts eyes and stared at the door of the pagoda, observing the array on the door. Originally, he thought that the array on the door was most likely a divine array, and that he would have to spend a lot of effort to break it. However, what surprised him was that the array that sealed the door of the pagoda was actually a saint array. Furthermore, it was the famous black tortoise coiling dragon array that had been passed down in the Xianwu continent for more than 2,000 years. More than 2,500 years ago, this top-notch saint array had been passed down to the world, and it had caused great controversy. Many martial sages admired this formation, including a few array saint masters. They praised this formation and called it the strongest defensive formation below the immortal state. Such exaggerated praise and statement naturally caused many experts to be dissatisfied and doubtful. Especially the forces that established themselves based on ancient arrays. They were unconvinced and announced that they were going to break this array and stop the rumors. Thus, more than 20 martial saints and hundreds of forces gathered in the vast divine kingdom to bear witness to this event. But in the end, many array saint masters took turns to break the black tortoise dragon coiling formation. Those forces were disheartened and could only leave dejectedly. After that, they no longer raised any objections. When the news spread, it caused a sensation on the continent. All the martial artists in the world discussed it excitedly, and they all agreed that the black tortoise dragon coiling formation was worthy of being called the #1 defensive saint array. It was the strongest formation below the immortal state. For the next 1,000 years, this was the consensus of all the martial artists on the continent, as if it was the truth. Countless array experts dreamed of breaking the black tortoise dragon coiling formation and using it to become famous. However, no one had been able to do it. That was until more than 1,500 years ago, when Kenshin emerged from the vast divine kingdom and rose to power with an invincible momentum. At the peak of Tianzhu Peak, he had personally broken the black tortoise dragon coiling formation in only 12 hours. This matter spread throughout the world and shocked all the martial artists in the world once again. The martial world was abuzz with discussion and the array world was thunderstruck. Of course, Kenshin had created many miracles and legends. This was only one of them and he had never been proud of it. In fact, he did not even take it to heart. Many years later, the method to break the black tortoise dragon coiling formation spread throughout the continent and was grasped by many martial sages. The martial artists in the world no longer paid attention to this great formation, and very few people mentioned it again. Now that Zhi Tianxing saw the black tortoise dragon coiling formation again, he could not help but recall the past and feel a little emotional. It seems that the Yin-Yang sages set up this great formation to seal the door of the pagoda. More than 2,000 years ago, this formation was the strongest saint-level defensive formation, and also the strongest formation that the Yin-Yang sages could set up. However, they did not expect that 300 years after they went into seclusion, I would break this great formation in front of everyone. After sighing, Zhi Tianxing began to cast spells to break the great formation. Back then he had been a martial sage and had only used 12 hours to break this formation. Now he only had the strength of a tribulation stage cultivator, but he had the experience of breaking formations. Kibbe said that he was very familiar with it. After a short 8 hours he had broken the great formation. Of course he had only broken it. He had not destroyed or removed the great formation. Swoosh! A dazzling golden light flashed and the door slowly opened to both sides. Following a series of muffled noises, dust began to fall from the tall golden door. After the light shone through the gap in the door, it quickly dispelled the darkness. When the door was completely open, Zhi Tianxing stepped into the pagoda. When he entered the pagoda, the golden door closed automatically with a bang. His surroundings were plunged into darkness again, and he could not see anything with the naked eye. Using his divine sense, he saw that there was a vast hall beneath his feet. Or rather, it was more appropriate to call it a square. The square was dark and filled with a cold and deathly stillness. The ground was paved with black stone slabs, which were already covered with a faint layer of dust. No one had set foot here for hundreds of years. The square had a radius of 5 kilometers like a full moon. In the middle of the square stood 2 tall statues. In the northwest corner of the square, there were 200-meter-tall pine and cypress trees, but they had long withered and weathered, becoming as black as charcoal. There had been a stone table and 2 stone benches under the trees, but they had been covered by withered branches and dust. Zhi Tianxing spread his divine sense outwards, and soon saw that there were many mansions, palaces and houses around the square. Stone roads paved with jade were interspersed between the various palaces and houses. The entire first floor of the pagoda was like a city, and it could accommodate 100,000 people. Ji Tianxing vaguely guessed that this was probably the living quarters of the two sages of Yinyang. Thus he stepped across the square and walked toward the statues in the middle of the square. After a while he came to the two stone statues. These two towering statues were of a man and a woman, and they were both made of supreme-grade spirit jade. The torso was made of psychic white jade and the outer clothes, hair accessories and costumes were made of various colored jade. Chapter 1971. Without a doubt, these two lifelike statues were the Yinyang sages. The man on the left was handsome and majestic, his body tall and full of masculine dominance. The woman on the right was enchanting. Not only was she beautiful, but she was also very charming. Her beauty was very special, as if she had the ability to charm people and bewitch all living things. It was a unique ability of the demon race. If an ordinary man saw her, his soul would be hooked and he would not be able to eat or sleep. Even if he only saw her statue, he would be shocked and stunned for a long time. However, Ji Tianxing only glanced at her and then looked away. No matter how beautiful Yin Qi was, it would not affect his emotions and will. Back in the upper realm, he was the divine king who ruled over thousands of deities. What kind of beauty had he not seen? Beautiful daughters of aristocratic families, famous princesses of foreign races, beautiful fairies of sex, soul-stirring saintesses of the demon race. All of them had secretly fallen in love with him or threw themselves into his arms. However, he ignored them or rejected them outright. No matter how beautiful they were, they could not shake his martial heart. His gaze fell on the pedestal at the feet of the two statues. The pedestal that held the statues was very wide and was built very solemnly. It was also carved with mysterious inscriptions. On the open space around the pedestal there were rows of jade futons. There were more than 360 futons in total, arranged in the direction of the Great Orbital Formation, protecting the two statues. The futons looked simple, but they were carved with formation patterns and patterns, which had some special effect. Ji Tianxing looked around and could not help but frown. The statues of the Yinyang sages are here and there are so many futons around them. It's obviously for people to worship them. However, the Yinyang sages live here in seclusion and did not bring any people with them? Then who are these futons for? Who would come to worship them? The Yinyang sages are not people who are greedy for fame. They would not do such a thing to flatter themselves, right? As these thoughts flashed through his mind, Burial of Heaven's voice suddenly sounded. So it's like this, they can't be cultivating. Burial of Heaven's tone was a little strange and he stopped abruptly. Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows and asked, Burial of Heaven, what clues do you have? Burial of Heaven said in a low voice, It's nothing. I'm just guessing. We'll talk about it when we have the results. Ji Tianxing did not ask any more questions. He strode across the square and walked towards the corner of the square. Arriving under two withered pine and cypress trees, he waved his hand and shot out a golden light. It was as if an invisible hand had pushed away the dead branches and dust. A stone table and two stone stools appeared in front of him. There was also a chess set on the stone table. The black and white pieces had just been placed, and the game had obviously not started yet. On the ground under the stone table, there were scattered white chess pieces and a few pieces of green jade. It was obviously used to store chess pieces, but it had been smashed to pieces. Ji Tianxing took a few glances and secretly imagined some scenes, speculating about what had happened in the past. Next he left the square and explored the surrounding palaces and houses. He was extremely fast. His divine sense spread out, invading the various buildings and starting a carpet search. 4 hours later he had finished searching the thousands of houses and palaces around the square. What surprised him was that there were many daily necessities of the human race in the various houses and palaces. There were pots and pans, teacups, jugs of wine, bedding, everything that one could think of. Ji Tianxing could not help but suspect that there had once been tens of thousands of people living in the houses and palaces around the square. But what was strange was that there was not a single living person in those houses and palaces. There was not even a skeleton. Many of the rooms were also a little messy. There were many tea sets, clothes and other items that had not been packed up in time. Ji Tianxing could not help but guess, could there have been tens of thousands of people living here but something suddenly happened and everyone fled? Everyone left in a hurry and did not even have time to pack up their things. Thinking of this, he turned his head and looked into the depths of the darkness. His divine sense locked onto the palace tens of thousands of feet away. It was a dark golden palace that was hundreds of feet tall. This palace was surrounded by many houses and palaces, like stars surrounding the moon. It was the highest and most dignified of all. Only this palace had not been searched by Zhi Tianxing. It seems that the palace should be the residence of the two sages of Yin and Yang. Maybe I can find some clues. His figure flashed and flew tens of thousands of feet away, arriving outside the dark golden palace. Under the eaves of the corridor outside the door, the ground was covered with a thin layer of dust. There were glass shards scattered all over the ground, as well as broken palace lanterns and bronze lamp holders. Even the door had a crack that was more than 10 feet long, which was obviously caused by the sword light. In addition, there were many small scars and cracks that covered the entire door. The array on the door had long been broken, so Zhi Tianxing could easily break it. He pushed open the door of the palace and stepped into the dark hall. When he spread out his divine sense and saw the scene in the hall, he was stunned on the spot. The spacious hall was thousands of feet wide. There were 18 pillars carved with dragons and phoenixes. The floor was also paved with jade. It should have been magnificent. However, the entire hall was filled with grayish-white skeletons. Countless human skeletons had long been shattered, turning into billions of bone rods and fragments that were piled up in a mess. It was like a small hill filling up the entire hall. Zhi Tianxing had just taken 2 steps when he stepped on more than 10 white bones. They were shattered and turned into grayish-white fragments. Such a horrifying scene made Zhi Tianxing frown deeply. A thick cloud of doubt shrouded his heart. He swept his cold gaze across the small hill of bones. Soon he understood the situation. Many thoughts flashed through his mind. There are at least 100,000 skeletons. Most of them are human warriors. A small number are face skeletons. However, these people are not very strong. Most of them are below the essence soul realm. After they die, their skeletons can be preserved in a sealed space for more than 1,000 years. However, the moment they come into contact with air, they will be weathered and quickly turn into a pile of white bone fragments. As expected, the small hill of bones that filled the entire hall was rapidly collapsing and shrinking. Countless skeletons were weathering rapidly, turning into grayish-white fragments. About a quarter of an hour later, the huge white bone mountain disappeared. The floor of the hall was covered with a layer of white bone fragments that were 2 meters thick. It was only then that Zhi Tianxing saw a spacious throne at the head of the hall. The throne was gilded with gold and embedded with jade. There were hundreds of rare gems embedded in it. It was a priceless treasure. However, that was not the main point. On the spacious throne, there was a pile of ice crystal-like bones that emitted a faint blue light. There was a grayish-white luster in the pile of ice crystal bones that pulsated weakly like a flame. Even though he was 1,000 feet away, Zhi Tianxing could sense that the pile of ice crystal bones was extraordinary. It was definitely the remains of an expert. Chapter 1972. Zhi Tianxing seemed to have guessed something when he saw the broken bones on the throne. He crossed the hall in a flash and landed in front of the majestic throne. As he got closer, the cold air from the broken bones became even more bone-chilling, making him feel as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. He did not know how long the broken bones had been on the throne. A few hundred years. Or more than 1,000 years. Even after such a long time, the broken bones still shone like new crystal-clear ice. Even the cracks and fractures on the broken bones were still clear as if they had just appeared yesterday. Moreover, one of the more complete bones had 9 lightning runes clearly visible. That was the sign of the 9 heavenly tribulations. There was no doubt that this was the corpse of a martial sage. Only the corpse of a martial sage could be preserved for more than 1,000 years without rotting. Zhi Tianxing observed for a while and confirmed the identity of this corpse. It was the Yin sage of the Yin Yang sages, Yin Qi. Strange. Yin Qi, a rank 9 martial sage, had actually died here with her body smashed into pieces? According to the legends, the Yin Yang sages were virtuous and unworldly experts. Why are there 100,000 corpses in this hall? If the deaths of the 100,000 corpses are related to the Yin Yang sages, then how are they different from the demon race? Zhi Tianxing frowned as he pondered with a grave expression. The doubt in his heart grew even stronger. At this moment the burial of heaven reminded him, the ball of white light in the broken bones may be the spiritual consciousness of the common life. If it is well preserved you will benefit greatly. Ji Tianxing reached out his hand to push aside the ice crystal fragments and picked up the white light. This ball of white light was a walnut-sized ball of light. It was grayish-white and had no impurities. Although this ball of light was small, it contained a destructive power and was filled with a dangerous aura. Ji Tianxing knew that even the spiritual consciousness of a martial sage could not be compared to this ball of light. The difference in power was at least 10 times. He carefully released his spiritual consciousness and wrapped it around the ball of light, probing it bit by bit. After a while his expression changed and he retracted his spiritual consciousness. He nodded and said in a complicated tone, "You guessed right. This is the crystallization of the common life's spiritual consciousness. There are at least 100,000 spiritual consciousnesses and beliefs in this crystallization. The power is very chaotic. However, after thousands of years of accumulation, those chaotic and violent divine senses had long since stabilized. As long as I cultivate in seclusion, I can use the pure Yang Tian Heart Sutra to purify the common life's spiritual consciousness. After I refine it, my strength will definitely advance by leaps and bounds and rise by a few levels." Although the content of Ji Tianxing's speech was very exciting, it was still very exciting. However, his tone was very calm and there were some complicated emotions in it. Buried Heaven said in a low voice, "This is a great opportunity. It can save you years of cultivation. Why wouldn't you be happy?" The two Yin-Yang saints had actually raised 100,000 human and demon warriors in this mystic realm. They built statues for the common people to worship and collect the power of faith from the common people. Finally, they took the people's spiritual consciousness and used the common life God sealing technique to crystallize their spiritual consciousness. They want to use the spiritual consciousness to break through to the godly state. What was the difference between their actions and those of the evil Tao? Even in the upper realm, such actions are despised by the gods. Yes, I guessed this possibility when I was in this square. The Yin-Yang saints couldn't break through to the godly state. It's very likely that they used the common life God sealing technique to break through to the godly state. But don't forget, the common life God sealing technique is a divine art, not a demonic secret art. The gods used this technique to absorb the spiritual consciousness of the people. It's also a shortcut to increase their strength and is widely recognized by the upper realm. It's just that you're arrogant and don't care about this technique. You think it's evil. Before it could finish, Ji Tianxing interrupted it. No. Even if the Yin-Yang saints cultivated the common life God sealing technique, they only needed to raise hundreds of thousands of people and continuously absorb the spiritual consciousness. Why would they kill hundreds of thousands of people and deprive them of their souls and spiritual consciousness? Even the gods of the upper realm wouldn't do such an inhumane thing like killing the goose that lays the golden egg, right? Burial Heaven thought for a moment and said, "The common life God sealing technique is an upper realm divine art. It shouldn't appear in this world." The Yin-Yang saints were able to obtain this technique mostly because of this Jutian 10 Absolutes Tower. I'm guessing that there's a problem with the common life God sealing technique that they obtained. Or there's a problem with their cultivation and they couldn't break through to the martial God realm. That's why they did such an extreme thing. Ji Tianxing nodded in agreement. That's very likely. However, there's only Yin Qi's corpse here. There's no sign of Yang Tian's remains. Let's continue looking. Maybe we'll find some clues and solve the truth. After saying that, he put away the common life God sealing technique and turned to leave the hall. An hour later, he had searched the entire palace and sure enough he had found something. In a few secret rooms he found many useful items and clues. There were many elixirs, cultivation methods and jade slips, as well as materials for weapon refinement and talisman drawing. Unfortunately, there were only a few saint-level elixirs and no saint-level magic treasures. The rest of the cultivation methods and materials were all low-level. Ji Tianxing didn't care about them at all. In addition, there were some tattered books that recorded the Yin-Yang saints' handwritten notes and experiences. This was so important that it attracted Ji Tianxing's attention. He finished reading the few tattered books and understood what had happened. He had a general understanding of the Yin-Yang saints' experience. Burial Heaven saw him frowning and pondering. He asked, Why are the Yinyang saints so poor? Why are there only these low-level resources in the palace they live in? Ji Tianxing explained calmly. It said that the Yinyang saints had reached the peak of their cultivation and lived in seclusion, seeking the possibility of breaking through to the immortal realm. However, who would have thought that their seclusion was actually an accident? Burial Heaven was startled. He asked in a confused tone, "What do you mean? Do you already know what happened?" Ji Tianxing nodded and explained. Over 1,800 years ago, the Yinyang saints had reached the 9th-layer martial sacred realm. They had been traveling around the world, searching for the opportunity to break through to the martial god realm. They had never thought of living in seclusion. They visited martial god Taihao and received some enlightenment. They even visited martial god Tianjue but were rejected. Later they thought of the godly ruins and decided to investigate the mysterious godly ruins. If they could meet the legendary old man of the godly ruins, they might be able to find the opportunity to break through to the martial god realm. However, they ended up somewhere close to the fallen blood lake by accident. They had accidentally stumbled into an alternate space, which was this small world, the so-called Yinyang mystical realm. After entering, they could no longer leave. Chapter 1973. There's no exit? Burial of Heaven was stunned for a moment before realization dawned on him. I see. No wonder the Yinyang saints never appeared again after they disappeared. Then wouldn't we be trapped here and unable to leave? Ji Tianxing nodded and said, from the looks of it, that's indeed the case. However, there's no hurry. Let's figure out the situation first. I have a feeling that the clues to leave this small world should be in the Jutian 10 Absolutes Tower. Buried Heaven expressed his agreement and continued to ask, by the way, what happened after the Yinyang saints entered this world? What about the 100,000 human clan and demon clan warriors? What was going on? Where did they come from? Ji Tianxing continued to explain. The Yinyang saints accidentally entered this place and accidentally discovered that it was a holy land for cultivation, a paradise. There were many natural treasures and countless demon beasts in the secret realm. In fact, they even encountered many human and demon race ancient martial art practitioners and clashed with them. The ancestors of those human and demon martial artists entered this secret realm 3,000 years ago and were trapped here, unable to leave. Therefore, the ancestors of the human and demon martial artists could only survive in this secret realm. They entered the Jutian 10 Absolutes Tower and built many houses and buildings on the first level of the pagoda. While reproducing and cultivating, they continued to explore the pagoda and this secret realm, looking for a chance to leave. However, more than 1,000 years had passed. They still couldn't find the exit, nor could they find any clues to leave. In fact, they were trapped on the first level of the pagoda and couldn't even enter the second level. The number of humans and demons also multiplied from the initial few dozen to more than 60,000. Burial of Heaven commented upon hearing this. In more than 1,000 years, they multiplied from a few dozen to more than 60,000? The reproduction ability of the human clan and the demon clan is truly terrifying. Ji Tianxing responded blandly. Among all the races in this universe, the human race and the monster race can be ranked in the top 10 in terms of reproduction. The top 3 races only need 1 male and 1 female to produce an army of tens of millions within 1,000 years. Burial of Heaven suddenly thought of something and said in a strange tone, "Are you talking about the gold-devouring great world? The male and female gold-devouring ant people produced billions of offspring in 10,000 years and occupied the entire world. It's truly terrifying." We've gone off topic. Ji Tianxing waved his hand and continued. After 1,000 years, the humans and demons here can already marry and coexist peacefully. After experiencing too many failures, they gave up the idea of leaving and decided to live well in this secret realm. However, the Yinyang saints broke in here 1,800 years ago. When they saw the Jutian 10 Absolutes Tower, they were certain that this pagoda was mysterious and extraordinary. Upon entering the first level of the pagoda, they discovered tens of thousands of humans and demons. Originally, the Yinyang saints wanted to find out more information about this secret realm and the pagoda from the people. However, the people of the two races were hostile to them. They thought they were intruders and wanted to capture them and execute them. Burial of Heaven sneered and said, "The result is self-evident." Of course. Ji Tianxing nodded and said, "The strength of the people of the two races is relatively ordinary. The strongest is only in the primordial spirit realm. To the saints of Yin and Yang, the 60,000 civilians were as weak as ants. Therefore, after a great battle, thousands of people from the two clans were slaughtered. The strongest of the two races all died by the swords of the Yin-Yang saints. The Yin-Yang saints used their invincible strength to intimidate the people of the two races and became the overlords of this place. Then the Yin-Yang saints established order and rules for the people of the two races and firmly ruled this place. The people of the two races were not oppressed or enslaved by the Yin-Yang saints. They lived as usual. They quickly got used to it and gradually accepted the Yin-Yang saints' rule. After all, the Yin-Yang saints only wanted to find a chance to break through to the martial god realm. They were busy cultivating in seclusion or exploring the pagoda. 150 years later, after hundreds of failures, they finally broke the seal and opened the passage to the second level. Burial of Heaven became interested when he heard this. However, Ji Tianxing stopped there and didn't say anything else. Burial of Heaven was a little anxious. He quickly asked, "What happened after that?" The Yin-Yang saints entered the second level of the pagoda? What did the second level look like? What treasures were hidden there? Ji Tianxing spread his hands and said calmly, "In the book I found, that's all there was to it. As for whether they entered the second level or found anything, who knows?" Burial of Heaven said confidently, "I'm sure that the Yin-Yang saints entered the second level of the pagoda. Otherwise, where did they get the life god sealing technique?" "Yes, I think so too." Ji Tianxing nodded in agreement. He held Burial of Heaven's sword and walked toward the square. "We've already searched the first level of the pagoda. There are no more useful clues here. Let's go to the second level." When he finished speaking, he had already arrived at the center of the square and landed in front of the Yin-Yang saint's statue. He waved his hand and sent a golden light into the pedestal under the statue's feet. Instantly, the pedestal of the statue lit up with a hazy golden light. Countless seal scripts and formation patterns flickered. After a few breaths, a blazing white light pillar appeared in the hazy golden light and shot up into the sky. The light pillar was 100 feet tall and connected to the dark dome above. Ji Tianxing raised his head to look at the dome and saw that there were densely packed silver light spots on the pitch-black dome. It was like a resplendent starry sky. A smile flashed in his eyes. He stepped into the white light. Swoosh! Ji Tianxing's figure disappeared with a flash of light. The blazing white light pillar also dissipated immediately. The golden light at the pedestal of the statue quickly retracted and returned to its original appearance, as if nothing had happened. In the next moment, Ji Tianxing felt his vision blur and he arrived in another space. It was pitch black all around. There was no light. The ground under his feet was flat and made of black stone slabs. It was hard and cold. In the surrounding darkness, there were many hazy black figures standing there silently. Ji Tianxing released his divine sense and spread it in all directions. He immediately saw it clearly. The second level of the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes pagoda was still an empty square. However, there was a tall altar in the middle of the huge square. The altar was as black as ink. It was 600 feet tall and took up 1,000 feet of space. From the ground to the top of the altar, there were a total of 49 steps. At the top of the altar was a platform with a radius of 100 feet. A statue was erected on the platform. It was a ferocious-looking demon expert with 3 heads and 6 arms. The square around the altar was densely packed with statues. There were more than 1,000 of them. Chapter 1974. Ji Tianxing was standing under the altar among the many statues. He had observed carefully and found that the thousands of demon statues were very old. The carving technique was also very ancient. It did not look lively enough. It was also a little simple and blurry. He could only see the general outline and appearance of the statues. They were not detailed enough. The surface of the stone statues was covered with etchings of time. It was already very rough and blurry. Even a slight breeze would cause fine stone powder to fall from the surface of the stone statues. It's at least 10,000 years old. Ji Tianxing came to a conclusion. He walked through the many statues and climbed up the steps to the altar. At the top of the altar, he observed the demon god's statue at close range. Even though the statue was very old and its face was blurred, it was still very old. Ji Tianxing identified the statue's physical characteristics and immediately guessed the answer. If I remember correctly, this Fey god statue should be the legendary 6-armed Vajra war god. Burial of Heaven continued, I guessed so too. The billions of demons in the upper realm recognized the 7 ancestors of the demon race and the 42 primitive demon gods. The 6-armed golden war god is one of the 42 primitive demon gods. Its status is comparable to the divine king. However, these are all myths and legends of the demon race. No one has seen it with their own eyes. Even the statues of the 6-armed golden war god can be seen everywhere in the demon race's ancestral halls and altars. That is also the demon race's fantasy. Does the 6-armed golden war god exist? What does his real body look like? No one knows the answer. Ji Tianqing nodded and said in a calm tone, "Back then we had a lot of dealings with the demon race, so we have a good understanding of the demon race. Whether or not the 6-armed golden war god exists, billions of demons worship him as a primitive demon god and have always worshipped him with incense. With the power of faith of billions of demons, the 6-armed golden war god will never fall. This is the trick of the common people's god-sealing technique. Therefore, I guess that the yin-yang saints came here to obtain the common people's god-sealing technique." Burial of Heaven was silent for a moment, then said doubtfully, "I've observed it. There are no Yao characters on the altar or the Yao god statue. There are only some ancient symbols. How can they record the god-sealing technique?" Ji Tianqing said with certainty, "The 6 arms of the 6-armed Vajra war god are respectively holding the giant star sword, the soul-chasing chain, the 8 treasures compass, the scarlet cloud banner, the war sky hammer, and the book of punishment. These 5 divine artifacts and Xingdian represented its supreme power and dominance. However, the statue in front of us only has 5 hands holding the 5 divine artifacts. The 6th hand is empty." Burial of Heaven immediately understood what he meant. "You're saying that there should be another codex in the 6th palm, but it was taken away by someone?" "Correct." Ji Tianqing nodded. "The divine weapons in those 5 hands are only stone sculptures. Of course the yin-yang saints wouldn't take them. If it's a real divine artifact they definitely won't let it go." Burial of Heaven asked doubtfully, "But you just said that the 6th palm should be holding the Yao god Xingdian." Ji Tianqing revealed a playful smile. "This is just a statue. How can it hold the real Xingdian? It looks like a codex, but in reality, it's most likely the life god-sealing technique." Burial of Heaven agreed. "That makes sense. It seems that the Yao god statue, the altar, and the thousands of Yao statues were built to display the life god-sealing technique. Also, who knew who refined this 9 heavens 10 absolutes pagoda? What's the purpose of it?" Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "Continue exploring. It shouldn't be difficult to find the answer." Thus, he left the altar with Burial of Heaven's sword and explored the situation around the plaza. 4 hours later he had explored the entire 2nd floor of the pagoda. In the darkness around the plaza, there was an endless wasteland. The ground was covered with gravel and barren soil. Other than that there was nothing else. Not to mention buildings, there wasn't even a stone tablet or stone table. Ji Tianqing could only return to the plaza and continue observing the altar and the Yao god statue. Other than this altar and these statues, there's nothing else on the 2nd floor. The yin-yang saints must have been here, but they didn't leave any traces or clues. It seems that if I want to reach the 3rd floor of the pagoda, I'll have to start from this altar." Ji Tianqing muttered softly as he observed the altar with shining eyes. He used the 10,000 divine thoughts eyes. His eyes turned golden and the scene in front of him immediately changed. He looked through the black rock and saw the interior of the altar. There was a ball of blazing white light floating in the darkness. That was the entrance to the 3rd floor. However, he needed to find a way to activate the formation to open the entrance. Thus he looked up at the Yao god statue. Inside the grayish-brown statue, there were also strands of 5-colored brilliance flowing quietly. This was especially true for the 3 heads and 6 arms, which contained even greater mysteries. Ji Tianqing stared at the 5-colored veins and carefully observed the structure of the formation. He focused on analyzing it. Time passed silently. Soon 2 hours had passed. Ji Tianqing suddenly understood something and revealed a look of realization. "I always thought that this pagoda was a divine artifact, and the formation in this altar must be an ancient divine formation." Chapter 1975. Whoosh. After a few breaths, the golden light arrived at the peak of the mountain. The golden light landed outside the formation and quickly faded away. A thin and tall figure immediately appeared. It was a middle-aged man who was 7 feet tall and had skin as pale as paper. He was wearing a gray robe with a ponytail and a wisp of beard on his chin. His face was thin and his eyes were sinister and sharp, emitting a gloomy aura from his body. No one knew how strong he was. However, his face and aura gave people a feeling of extreme danger that kept people away. The man's sudden arrival immediately attracted the attention of the various factions. Everyone's attention was focused on the white-robed man, secretly sizing him up. Everyone was confused. Who was this man? He actually dared to swagger over and land right outside the Heaven-Shattering Alliance's formation? Was he also a martial Sacred Realm expert who wanted to challenge the Broken Sky Alliance? The answer was soon revealed. Inside the defensive formation, the experts of the Heaven-Shattering Alliance were overjoyed and relieved. Xianxia in particular let out a sigh of relief. He quickly flew out of the formation and bowed respectfully to welcome the white-robed man. 100 Gathering City's Chief Xianxia welcomes Inspector Xianxia. The expressions of the experts around the peak of the mountain changed when they heard Xianxia's voice. They were filled with dread. Many smart experts retreated without batting an eyelid, fleeing into the distance. Everyone knew that the inspector of the Broken Sky Alliance was basically a martial Sacred Realm expert. The Heaven-Shattering Alliance was already the dominant force, and now that they had a patrol envoy, they were like a tiger that had grown wings. No one could rival them. The various factions only wanted to leave this place to avoid being noticed by the patrol envoy and be punished as an example to others. Xianxia looked at Xianxia expressionlessly and said in a deep voice, "Chief Qin, you don't have to be so formal. Let's talk inside." Xianxia hurriedly bowed and made a gesture to invite him in. Xianxia stepped into the defensive formation and walked toward the entrance of the Yin-Yang secret realm. When he arrived at the golden and blue door, he stared at the door and observed it quietly. Xianxia waited patiently at the side, not daring to interrupt. After a long time, Heavenly Slayer revealed a cold smile and said, "So it's the long-lost Heavenly Capital Icefire Formation. Looks like I've made the right decision to come here." Xianxia was overjoyed when he heard this. He quickly asked, "Lord Tianheng, it seems that you should be able to break this formation easily?" "Of course." Pride flashed through Tian Slayer's eyes. He said in a dignified tone, "I've heard of the Yin-Yang Saints' great names 1,000 years ago. I respect you greatly. There are only 3 powerhouses that I respect the most, the twin sages of Yin-Yang and Kenshin. I know all of their deeds like the back of my hand. This celestial ice and fire formation was originally the supreme technique of the celestial great saint 3,000 years ago. Later it was obtained by the Yin-Yang saints." After Heavenly Slayer finished talking, Xianxia hurriedly flattered and said with a smile, "Lord Heavenly Slayer is a learned celestial being, erudite and knowledgeable. This subordinate truly admires you to the extreme. I wonder if my lord can start breaking the formation now? Do you need me to clear the area and get rid of those eyesores?" Over the past few days, Xianxia had been suppressing a bellyful of anger. He could not wait to kill all the powerhouses. However, he did not dare to act recklessly. He could only hide in the defensive formation and wait for Heavenly Slayer's arrival. Now that Heavenly Slayer was here, he wanted to use this opportunity to get rid of all the powerhouses. Heavenly Slayer waved his hand and said with a disdainful expression, "There's no need to clear the area. The Heaven-Shattering Alliance is the strongest alliance on the continent. Of course, we have to be magnanimous and not bicker with those ants. Even if we let them watch, they won't be able to steal the formation, let alone affect me. Xianxia, pick 8 array Dao Grandmasters to help me break the array. If nothing unexpected happens, I'll be able to break the formation within 2 days." Xianxia, who was full of anticipation, was stunned. He subconsciously asked, 2 days? Previously, when he saw Ji Tianxing break the formation, he only took an hour to do it. In his opinion, even if Inspector Tian Slayer did it himself, he would be able to break the formation within an hour. However, he did not expect that Heavenly Slayer would need the help of 8 array masters and still need 2 days to break the formation. Wasn't he too weak? Heavenly Slayer saw Xianxia's strange expression and could not help but frown. He asked in a deep voice, "What? Do you have a problem?" How could Xianxia dare to speak his mind? He quickly shook his head and said, "No, no." Heavenly Slayer was smart. How could he not see that something was wrong? His gaze was sharp as he stared at Xianxia with a cold expression. He asked, "How long has the white-robed brat been in the formation?" Xianxia was suppressed by his aura and answered in a trembling voice, "Lord Heavenly Slayer, that brat has been in there for 2 days." Heavenly Slayer's expression turned even uglier. He asked, "How long did he take to break the Heavenly Capital Icefire formation?" This. Xianxia looked troubled and stammered, not daring to answer. "Speak." Heavenly Slayer shouted coldly as a terrifying aura erupted from his body. Xianxia could only bite the bullet and answer, "Lord, he only took 1 hour." What? Heavenly Slayer's eyes immediately widened in disbelief. He almost thought that he had misheard. He did not expect or believe this answer. However, he knew that Xianxia did not dare to lie. There were 50 experts from the Broken Sky Alliance present. Xianxia could not have lied. 2 days. 1 hour. The difference between the two was too great and the contrast was too obvious. When Tianshang recalled his arrogant and confident words, he felt ashamed and resentful. His confidence was severely damaged. He was so depressed that he almost vomited blood. With a dark expression, he did not say another word. He turned around and started to cast a spell to break the formation. Xianxia was also frightened. He quickly ordered 8 elite experts to help Heavenly Slayer break the formation. For the next day and a half, Heavenly Slayer focused on breaking the formation. To wash away his shame and regain his dignity, he did his best and did not dare to relax. After a day and a half, he finally broke the Heavenly Capital Icefire formation. Whoosh! The golden and blue door of light slowly opened to both sides, revealing a gap. Heavenly Slayer stopped. The 8 array grandmasters also let out a long breath. They retreated to rest as if they had collapsed. "Let's go." Heavenly Slayer had no intention of resting. He waved his hand and stepped into the door of light. Xianxia quickly followed. He led the dozen or so experts he had arranged in advance and stepped into the door of light. After 3 breaths, everyone disappeared in the white light. The golden and blue door immediately closed. The remaining 30 or so experts of the Broken Sky Alliance stayed in the formation and rested silently. The experts of the 30 or so forces discussed in secret. Many people were unwilling to give up. They were still looking for opportunities or waiting for the final result. Chapter 1976. In the Yin-Yang Mystic Realm. A group of experts was flying in the blue sky. The leader was Inspector Tianshang. Following closely behind him were Xianxia and 12 other experts. After entering the mystic realm, they had already flown 5,000 miles and crossed thousands of mountains and rivers. Tianshang was ashamed and angry, but he did not show it on his face. He kept a cold face and remained silent. He only wanted to find Ji Tianxing as soon as possible and fight him. Only by defeating Ji Tianxing and killing him could he wash away the shame from before. Soon they had flown for 10,000 miles, but they had not reached the end. They did not see anyone either. There were countless flying birds and beasts in the sky and mountains. Tianshang did not want to waste time. He ordered in a deep voice, "Xianxia, you and I will each take 6 people. We will move separately. If there is a situation, we will contact each other." Xianxia also understood that this mystic realm was vast. It was too stupid for a group to fly blindly. It was wise to move separately. Therefore, he did not hesitate to accept the order. He led the 6 experts and flew to the east. The remaining 6 experts followed Tianshang and flew to the west. Next, the 2 groups flew in the mystic realm and searched along the way. However, they soon encountered trouble. Many powerful demonic beasts began to attack the crowd. Xianxia and the 6 experts under him could only fight those beasts. Both sides fought fiercely. The battle was earth-shattering and the sun and moon dimmed. Although Xianxia and the others had successfully killed those beasts, they were still injured. However, the powerhouses all suffered minor injuries, and their magic power was greatly depleted. In addition, the huge commotion from the battle alerted even more beasts. They had not gone far when they were attacked by beasts again. They had to fight with all their might. After a dozen or so battles, not only did it slow down the group's speed and time, it also exhausted the experts and left them covered in wounds. After an entire day, they finally reached the edge of the small world. Fortunately, no beasts attacked again. Qin Haishan quickly stopped the group and found a secluded place to heal their injuries and adjust their breathing. On the other side, Tian Shang and the 6 experts encountered the same thing. Everyone was also attacked by demonic beasts, and they were entangled with each other along the way. They fought until the heavens collapsed and the earth cracked and the rivers were cut off. For an entire day, the group fought continuously for more than 10 rounds before they reached the end of the small world. Even though nobody died in battle, the 6 powerhouses were covered in wounds and their spiritual energy was depleted. They appeared to be in a sorry state. This was because the 6 of them were the ones who were risking their lives to defend against the enemies in the dozen or so battles. Heavenly Slayer watched coldly from the sidelines, showing no intention of intervening. He was the honorable patrol envoy, a martial sage. They were merely a few crossing Calamity Realm demonic beasts. They were not worth his time at all. This reason was very dignified and the 6 powerhouses didn't dare to complain at all. However, they felt sullen in their hearts and could only brace themselves and fight fiercely against the various demonic beasts. In the end, they suffered heavy injuries and only had 60 to 70% of their strength left. Even so, Heavenly Slayer would not empathize with them. They only allowed them to rest for 2 hours before they continued on their way to explore the secret realm. The 6 powerhouses groaned inwardly, but they could only endure their injuries and continue their journey with their exhausted bodies. Half a day later, the group was exploring a vast forest. Suddenly, Qin Haishan sent a message to Heavenly Slayer to report the news. He had discovered a mysterious pagoda in the depths of the mountain range. Heavenly Slayer was overjoyed when he heard the news. He quickly brought his men over to meet up with Qin Haishan. When he saw the golden pagoda with his own eyes, his eyes shone with anticipation. Qin Haishan was also filled with excitement. After the group met up, they quickly rushed to the golden pagoda to observe it closely. Heavenly Slayer looked at the 4 words on the door and carefully read them for a long time before he realized that they were ancient words. The words 9 heavens 10 ultimates were written. Qin Haishan took the opportunity to flatter Heavenly Slayer, praising him for being knowledgeable and knowledgeable. The 12 powerhouses also looked at him with respect and admiration. Heavenly Slayer's mood was much better, and the shameful anger in his heart gradually dissipated. He was in a good mood and he carefully observed the array on the door. After probing, investigating, and pondering, Heavenly Slayer finally found some clues after 2 hours. Excitement flashed in his eyes and he shouted in disbelief, "I understand now. I didn't guess wrongly. The sealing array on this pagoda is the Black Tortoise Dragon Array." Qin Haishan was stunned and asked in confusion, "Lord Heavenly Slayer, what's the origin of the Black Tortoise Dragon Array? It seems to be a powerful saint array." The 12 powerhouses were also puzzled as they looked at Heavenly Slayer. Heavenly Slayer glanced at them and his lips curled into a cold smile. He said in a playful tone, "You haven't even heard of the Black Tortoise Dragon Array? You're really ignorant." Qin Haishan did not feel embarrassed at being looked down on. On the contrary, he said even more respectfully, "We are ignorant. Please enlighten us, Lord Heavenly Slayer." Everyone's curious attitude made Heavenly Slayer very happy. He immediately found a chance to redeem his face and regain his confidence. "Since you are sincerely seeking guidance, then I will take some time to enlighten you. More than 2,000 years ago, the Black Tortoise Dragon Array was passed down to the world. It was known as the #1 defensive array below the God realm. This caused a huge controversy and many array Saint Masters questioned and were dissatisfied. Heavenly Slayer explained the legend of the Black Tortoise Dragon Array in detail to everyone. Qin Haishan and the others felt their blood boil and they all asked what happened next. "Lord Heavenly Slayer, what happened next?" More than 20 array Saint Masters could not break this array. This array is worthy of being called the #1 defensive saint array. Since this array is the #1 defensive saint array below the God realm, does that mean we can't break it? Heavenly Slayer looked up at the sky and said proudly, "There is no absolute defense in this world. If there is, then it must be because no one has found a way to break it." This sentence, which was full of philosophy, had been passed down by the powerhouses for more than 1,500 years. Do you know who said this? Qin Haishan and the others thought for a moment. Some shook their heads in confusion while others hurriedly answered, "I know. It was Kenshin who said it." Heavenly Slayer nodded and looked up at the sky with admiration. He said in a serious tone, "That's right. This saying came from the great Kenshin. The origin of this saying is because of the black tortoise dragon array. 1,500 years ago, Lord Kenshin had broken this array in front of everyone at the Pillar of Heaven's Mountain Dojo. At that time, Lord Kenshin was only a martial sage. However, he only used 12 hours to break the array. This matter shocked the world and even caused a commotion in the array Dao world. Most importantly, Lord Kenshin was broad-minded and did not hide anything. He had broken the array in front of everyone and showed them the way to break it. From then on, the Black Tortoise Dragon array was no longer the #1 defensive saint array. The way to break it was passed down and many martial sages learned it. Chapter 1977. When Xianxia said this, his voice was filled with pride, and his body exuded strong confidence. Qin Haishan and the 12 experts were influenced by his aura, and they continuously flattered him. Xianxia enjoyed seeing everyone's reverence and he was secretly pleased. He had regained the face he had lost at the heavenly capital Ice and Fire array. Qin Haishan, assist me. I'll start the array now. Xianxia waved his hand and gave the order in high spirits. Qin Haishan naturally obeyed and joined forces with the 12 experts to assist Xianxia. Unknowingly, another day passed. With everyone's help, Xianxia finally cracked the Black Tortoise Dragon array. The door of the pagoda emitted a golden light and slowly opened. Xianxia had a look of anticipation as he stepped through the door first. Qin Haishan and the others were also excited as they quickly followed. At the entrance of the Yin-Yang secret realm, under the dark night, the mountain peak was still lit up with colorful lights. There were still more than 30 elites of the Broken Sky Alliance guarding the defensive array within a 100-mile radius. They obeyed Qin Haishan's orders and did not leave the defensive array, nor did they attack the other forces. They only needed to preserve their energy and guard the defensive array. Outside the array, more than half of the experts of the various forces had left. The remaining experts of the dozen or so forces were still lurking around the mountain peak, waiting silently. Everyone understood that the white-robed martial saint and Inspector Xianxia had entered the secret realm. No matter what treasures there were in the secret realm, they would be taken by the two martial saints. No one else had the right to touch them. These forces were unwilling to leave and were still guarding around the mountain peak, hoping for a miracle. It was now the middle of the night and the night dew was heavy. The moon had already disappeared, and only a few stars were still shining in the dark night sky. In the past few days, the mountain peak had been peaceful, and the elites of the Broken Sky Alliance had also let down their guard. However, at this moment, a red light suddenly lit up in the night sky to the southeast. The blood-red arc of light streaked across the sky like lightning, traveling at an unbelievable speed. Whoosh! After a few breaths, the blood-red arc of light traveled 300 miles and arrived outside the defensive array. At this moment, the experts of the Heaven-Shattering Alliance finally came to their senses. Everyone stared at the outside of the formation and saw with their own eyes that the ball of bloody light dissipated, revealing a large group of figures. More than 20 black figures lined up neatly outside the formation. These figures were of different heights, but most of them were very tall and powerful. They wore long black robes and were surrounded by a layer of mysterious black fog. These people's auras were very cold, revealing a trace of blood and death. Their leader was a ferocious beast that was 10 feet tall and had a pitch-black body. Its body was tall and sturdy, its limbs were thick and powerful, and its entire body was covered in black scales that formed a layer of armor that was suffused with the cold light of death. It had a long tail behind it like a scorpion with a hook. On its sturdy back there was a pair of pitch-black wings. His broad wings glowed with a cold light, and there was a circle of barbs on the edges. They were filled with a dangerous aura. It stood proudly outside the formation and slowly raised its huge head. It opened its scarlet eyes and looked into the defensive formation. An extremely dangerous killing intent spread out in all directions. When the elites of the Heaven-Shattering Alliance saw the appearance of this huge black beast, they were filled with shock and fear as they exclaimed, "Heavens! What kind of monster is this? Damn it! Could it be that demonic beasts also want to enter the secret realm? No. That's not a demonic beast, it's very similar to the legendary ghost race." What? The ghost race of the North Underworld Mountain is here? Everyone, don't panic, we have the defensive formation, we don't need to fear them at all. The 30 or so experts were all shocked by the ferocious aura of the huge black beast and were in a panic. However, everyone quickly calmed down and took out their Dharma treasures and weapons as they were on high alert. Around the mountain peak, the experts hiding in the dark also saw the huge black beast and the 20 or so black-robed figures. Everyone felt the danger and the aura of death and quietly retreated far away, afraid that they would be harmed if they got too close. Because the aura of the huge black beast was too terrifying, everyone even forgot to sympathize with the heaven-shattering alliance and did not even have the thought of gloating. The atmosphere became more and more oppressive. Above the defensive formation, large amounts of black clouds gathered and covered the light of the formation. The huge black beast raised its thick and sturdy arms and extended its 4 black claws as blood-red flames appeared in its palms. It suddenly waved its hands and shot out a ball of blood-red flames with a terrifying aura towards the defensive formation. Boom! The ball of blood-red light that was the size of a water tank hit the defensive formation and exploded with a thunderous sound. The entire formation shook violently and even the 1,000-foot-tall mountain peak shook non-stop. The sturdy 5-colored light wall was instantly destroyed by the ball of blood-red light and a huge hole appeared. Dense cracks appeared around the hole and extended in all directions. Such a scene caused everyone to be stupefied, especially the experts of the heaven-shattering alliance who were inside the formation. Their eyes were wide open in shock as if they had seen a ghost. No one would have thought that this tribulation-grade defensive formation would not be able to withstand a single attack from the huge black beast. The crowd instantly realized that the giant black beast was definitely a martial sacred realm expert. In the ghost tribe of the North Underworld Mountain, martial sages were known as demon sages. After being stunned for a moment, the experts of the heaven-shattering alliance immediately cried out in shock and anger. It's the demon sage of the North Underworld Mountain. It's over. Lord Tianshang is not here. How can we block it? Everyone, don't panic. If we combine our powers, we will definitely be able to block it. Quick! Send a message to the branch leader and Lord Tianshang. Inside the formation there was a state of panic. More than 30 elite experts were filled with anxiety and fear. At the same time, the huge black beast had already stepped into the formation. Its figure flashed and turned into a black stream of air that charged towards the experts. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The black stream of air flickered as it passed through the crowd. It passed through the bodies of the elite experts one after another. Its speed was so fast that no one could see it clearly. The elite experts who were passed through by the black stream of air did not even have time to attack before their bodies stiffened and fell to the ground. There was a bloody hole in their chests that was as big as a wash basin. Only their bones were left in the bloody hole. Their internal organs were gone. Moreover, there was a bloody hole in their foreheads and the back of their heads could be seen from their foreheads. The spiritual souls in their heads were also shattered. Plop plop. Corpses fell to the ground one after another. Blood gushed out and dyed the grass red. In just 10 breaths' time, 18 elite experts had been killed instantly. They did not even have a chance to fight back. Chapter 1978. Such a strange and terrifying scene scared the surviving experts out of their wits. They originally thought that they had more people on their side. More than 30 tribulation stage experts working together were enough to deal with a martial saint expert. However, the black beast was too powerful and its methods were too strange. They could not guard against it. The remaining dozen or so experts immediately lost their fighting spirit and retreated in panic. There were even a few experts who hurriedly passed through the gap in the formation and fled in panic. However, the black airflow passed through their bodies after a few flashes. Plop, plop. In the blink of an eye, those experts became corpses and fell to the ground one after another. The black airflow stopped and turned back to its original form, the black beast that was more than 30 meters tall. It strode into the depths of the formation, its sharp black claws stepping on the ground, emitting a dull thud. As it approached, the remaining 10 experts in the formation completely lost their will to fight. They did not dare to resist anymore. They did not even have the thought of running away. They were all scared out of their wits. They hurriedly threw away their Dharma treasures and weapons and knelt on the ground to beg for mercy. Under the threat of death, dignity and integrity were not important. Moreover, the black beast had a mysterious origin and its methods were ruthless and cruel. It killed more than 20 experts in seconds without saying a word. It was too terrifying. Facing such a cold-blooded and heartless demon saint, kneeling and begging for mercy was the only way to survive. However, these 10 experts clearly did not understand the demon race. Even if they knelt on the ground and begged for mercy, it was useless. The black beast walked to the front of the crowd. A murderous intent flashed in its cold eyes. It waved its sharp claws and shot out hundreds of black light blades, enveloping the figures of the crowd. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. In the blink of an eye, the hundreds of black light blades shredded the 10 experts into pieces. Even their divine souls were shattered. The ground was littered with pieces of flesh and blood, scattered on the grass, emitting a thick bloody smell. The various experts outside the formation were scared out of their wits when they saw such a cruel scene. They desperately fled into the distance. At this point they no longer dared to have any illusions about the Yin-Yang secret realm. Previously there was the white-robed martial saint and heavenly slayer inspector. Now there was another demon saint. The treasures in the Yin-Yang secret realm would definitely fall into the hands of these 3 martial saints. No matter how many tribulation-passing experts there were, they were not qualified to compete for it. Fortunately, the black beast was not interested in the various experts. After killing all the elites of the Broken Heaven Alliance, it walked to the entrance of the secret realm and stared at the golden and blue doors, carefully observing them. More than 20 black-robed figures hurriedly entered the array to clean up the mess. 2 hours later, the black beast began to crack the heavenly capital Icefire array. The black-robed experts of the demon race also moved to help. The night passed quickly. By the time dawn arrived, the defensive formation on the mountain peak had already dissipated. The experts who had been lurking in the surroundings had all fled. Not many of them were left. When the first ray of light shone in the morning, the black beast had successfully broken the formation and opened the door to the secret realm. Shwa. The black beast was the first to step in, followed by the 20 or so black-robed demons. When their figures disappeared in the golden light, the golden and blue door also disappeared. The mountain peak regained its peace. There was no one else except the ground full of flesh and blood. In the Yin-Yang secret realm, on the 3rd level of the 9 Heavens 10 Absolutes Tower, Xianxia was sitting cross-legged on a huge grayish-brown rock. His eyes were closed as he circulated his energy and cultivated. He put his hands together in front of his chest, and a ball of white light floated in his palms. This ball of mysterious white light was the divine thought of common life that he had obtained before. The sword of burial of heaven was beside him, stuck in the huge rock, motionless. This huge rock with a radius of 30 meters was oval-shaped and covered a huge stone tomb. Under the huge rock was a stone tomb with a radius of 100 meters, built with tens of thousands of black stones. The black stones were rough and blurry, covered with a thick layer of powder, which was formed after being eroded by time. Without a doubt, this black stone tomb was very old, at least 10,000 years old. In front of the stone tomb, there was a tombstone that was 100 meters tall. Unfortunately, the tall tombstone had already shattered into pieces and scattered on the mountain peak. The words on the shattered stones were also blurred, and Xianxia could not make out what they were. Even with his vast knowledge, he could not guess what kind of divine being was buried in this mysterious ancient tomb. 3 days ago he came to the 3rd level of the pagoda. This space was not very large, only 10 li in radius, and was shrouded in boundless darkness. The 10 li of space was a grayish-brown wasteland, the ground covered in gravel and stone. In the middle of the cold and deathly still wasteland, there was a 1,000-meter-tall hill. The hill was barren with only brown stones. When he came to the summit, he discovered this mysterious stone tomb. But even after pondering and studying it for half a day, he could not find any clues. He could not see the origins of this ancient tomb, nor could he find the entrance to the 4th level. There was only one thing he was sure of. The clues about this ancient tomb must have been destroyed by the Yin-Yang saints. Since this was the case, he did not waste any more time. He sat on the stone tomb and used the pure Yang Tian scheming mantra to refine the divine thought of common life and increase his strength. Now 2 full days had passed. He had refined 60% of the divine thought of common life. The walnut-sized grayish-white light ball had also become the size of a peanut. A layer of hazy white light enveloped his body, making him exude a mysterious and powerful aura. After 2 days of cultivation, his strength had increased by more than 10 times. Especially his divine soul power, which had increased by 20 times, was stronger than the average martial sage. Logically speaking, with his strength increased by so many times, he should have reached the 6th or 7th level of the tribulation stage. But the strange thing was, the heavenly tribulation did not come. He did not even have any enlightenment about the heavenly tribulation. It was as if he could increase his strength rapidly as long as he kept absorbing energy. There was no need for him to go through the heavenly tribulation. Ji Tianxing was puzzled about this, but he could guess the general reason. It must be related to the Zhutian 10 Absolutes Pagoda. Soon another day passed. The white light in Ji Tianxing's palm had completely disappeared. He had completely refined the divine thought of common life. His strength had increased by several times, reaching the 8th level of the tribulation stage. He slowly stopped and opened his eyes. The voice of the burial of heaven immediately sounded in his mind. How strange. Your strength increased by more than 10 times, but you did not trigger the heavenly tribulation? Ji Tianxing looked at the dark sky calmly and said in a playful tone, maybe it's the Jiutian Tenju Tower that can block the will of heaven and isolate the heavenly tribulation? The burial of heaven was even more puzzled and said in disbelief, are you kidding? Only a king-grade divine artifact can achieve such a heaven-defying effect. Chapter 1979. How can a king-grade artifact appear in a low-level martial world? Burial of Heaven still could not believe it, nor could she accept this result. Ji Tianxing smiled. No matter what, this Jiutian 10 Extremes Tower is definitely not something from this world. There must be a reason why it appeared in Shenwu continent, but we don't know what it is yet. No matter what grade it is, as long as it's a divine artifact, it's a priceless treasure in this world. Burial of Heaven agreed with his words. Ji Tianxing stopped discussing this matter and used his myriad divine eyes to carefully observe the tomb below him. The 3rd level of the pagoda only had a wasteland in this tomb. Ji Tianxing was certain that the entrance to the 4th level was related to this tomb. It was just that he had not seen through its mysteries yet. Not long after, a ray of light flew through the dark sky and landed in front of Ji Tianxing. Whoosh! The light faded away, revealing a dark purple jade slip. Ji Tianxing raised his eyebrows when he saw the transmission jade slip, and his eyes flashed with anticipation. Cuckoo is actually sending me a message at this time? He muttered to himself and reached out to grab the jade slip, his consciousness entering it. Jike's voice immediately rang out in his mind. Brother Tianxing, Ji Shilua has brought more than 20 demon powerhouses to the entrance of the secret realm. He destroyed the Sky Shatter Alliance's formation and killed all the elites before entering the Yin-Yang secret realm. My realm is too low, so I don't have the qualifications to enter the secret realm. I was arranged to be near the Fallen Blood Lake to carry out other tasks. The demon powerhouses Ji Shilua brought are all tribulation stage powerhouses. There are a few blood gods among them, so you must be careful when dealing with them. Jike spoke quickly and her tone was a little anxious. After hurriedly relaying the news, her voice disappeared. Ji Tianxing put away the transmission jade slip and frowned, his eyes turning cold. After I entered the secret realm, Xianxia and the 50 elites of the Heaven-Shattering Alliance stayed behind in the Grand Defensive Formation. Xianxia had also reached the 8th stage of the Crossing Tribulation Realm. Their forces were so powerful, yet they were all killed by Ji Shilua? Is this new devil saint really that powerful? Ji Tianxing didn't know what happened outside after he entered the mystic realm. Now that he had received the news from Jiku, he was so shocked. Of course, he was only slightly shocked. No matter how strong Ji Shilua was, he would not take it to heart. Ji Shilua has also entered the mystic realm. We will meet soon. When the time comes, I'll make sure it doesn't return. Ji Tianxing muttered to himself and continued to observe the mysterious tomb. Unknowingly, 6 hours had passed. Ji Tianxing used his God's Eye secret technique to examine the ancient tomb over and over again. Finally, he found a trace of a formation's veins in the ancient tomb's rock layer. This discovery made him excited. Using that trace as the source, he spread out to search the surroundings. Soon he found a second formation node. Unexpectedly, this node was outside the ancient tomb in the wasteland hundreds of feet away from him. Moreover, it was hidden underground, very well hidden. Ji Tianxing roughly guessed something and continued to search in the distance. In the next few hours he found dozens of formation nodes one after another. The facts proved that his guess was completely correct. As expected, although this ancient tomb is the core of the third floor of the pagoda, it is also the entrance to the next floor. However, I can't start from the ancient tomb. I have to reverse the process and start from the surrounding wasteland. I couldn't find any clues before because my train of thought was wrong and I was going in the wrong direction. Then Ji Tianxing began to get busy. He flew and shuttled through the wasteland, casting spells to break the formation. In the dark and vast wasteland he found tens of thousands of formation nodes and veins. Connecting these nodes and lines was the structure of the entire formation. 3 days later, Ji Tianxing used his majestic magic power to light up the entire formation. A dazzling golden formation with a radius of tens of thousands of feet appeared in the darkness. The formation enveloped the wasteland and protected the mysterious ancient tomb, emitting a mysterious and powerful energy wave. Ji Tianxing stood in the wasteland and saw with his own eyes that golden light surged out of the ancient tomb. The dazzling golden light flew into the sky and turned into a huge golden bird, circling around the ancient tomb a few times. That golden bird had a strong and vigorous body. It had 3 legs and a tail like a phoenix. Looked mysterious and powerful. Ji Tianxing looked up at the golden bird, frowned for a moment and suddenly understood. It's the 3-legged golden crow. In the legends of the demon race, the 3-legged golden crow is the incarnation of the sun. It is eternal and has supreme power. The demon race has the 7 ancestors and 42 primitive demon gods. The 3-legged golden crow is one of the 42 demon gods. Speaking of this, he looked at the mysterious ancient tomb with a burning gaze, full of anticipation. If that's the case, this ancient tomb is related to the 3-legged golden crow. Previously, I found that there was a dark area in the ancient tomb that my divine sense could not penetrate. If I'm not wrong, that area is the core of the ancient tomb. If there are any treasures or divine skills hidden in it, it must be related to the 3-legged golden crow. Ji Tianxing's figure flashed as he flew over and landed on the ancient tomb. He cast the spell again and controlled the huge formation to investigate the situation in the ancient tomb. However, something unexpected happened. He still could not see the true face of the dark area and find out what was hidden in it. However, the formation was activated, causing the ancient tomb to release a sacred golden light that enveloped his body. Swoosh! A dazzling golden light enveloped him and flew into the sky, rushing toward the dark dome. He only felt his vision blur, and then he left the dark wasteland and entered another layer of space. The next moment he entered the 4th level of the pagoda and appeared above a blue sea. The sky was dark and gloomy, filled with a deathly silence and cold aura. All around him was a vast sea. The sea was as calm as a mirror without any ripples or ripples. Ji Tianxing stood above the sea and frowned as he looked around, puzzled. The 1st level is where the Yin-Yang sages and the hundreds of thousands of people live. On the 2nd level there is the statue of the 6-armed golden god of war and the secret skill. On the 3rd level, there is a mysterious ancient tomb related to the 3-legged golden crow. Based on the current situation, this Jutian 10 Absolutes pagoda should be a sacred weapon of the demon tribe. The 4th level was actually a vast ocean. I wonder which demon god is being worshipped in this space. Ji Tianxing muttered to himself and thought to himself, the secret skill of the 6-armed golden god of war has been taken away by the Yin-Yang sages. The treasures and inheritance in the golden crow ancient tomb are still sealed in darkness. The Yin-Yang sages did not get it and I can't get it for now. I can only try the 3rd level when I recover to the martial sage realm. Chapter 1980. While flying, Ji Tianxing released his divine sense to cover a radius of 1,000 miles. The sea was dozens of miles deep. His divine sense could penetrate the water and clearly explore the dark seabed. Below the seemingly tranquil and silent surface of the ocean, undercurrents were surging. Shocking scenes were hidden there. The cold and dark seabed was littered with the remains of many demonic beasts. The bones of those demonic beasts were basically broken. However, Ji Tianxing could infer the original appearance of the demonic beasts through those broken bones. Most of them were sea beasts that lived in the sea and were terrifyingly huge. There were giant sharks that were thousands of feet long, sea snakes that were like giant dragons and powerful walruses, sea apes and so on. Ji Tianqing could see that those sea beasts were not only huge in size but also very powerful. Basically, they had all reached the tribulation stage. However, they had not experienced the heavenly tribulation, so there were no lightning patterns on their bones. But for some reason, so many tribulation stage sea beasts had died in the sea and their bones were scattered at the bottom of the sea. Ji Tianqing picked up a few bones and carefully observed them. He determined that these sea beasts had been dead for more than 1,000 years. Of course, the sea beasts' bones were everywhere at the bottom of the sea. Most of them were at the tribulation stage. There were also many sea beasts that had not reached the tribulation stage. These sea beasts' fates were even worse. Not even a few complete bones were left. They had been completely turned into scraps. Ji Tianqing flew continuously for 30,000 miles and saw the same scene along the way. While this shocked him, he could not help but guess. Could it be that there was a disaster in this sea that caused so many sea beasts to die at the same time? With a heart full of doubts, Ji Tianqing continued to fly in the sea. When he arrived at the 4th level and saw the sea, he understood. From the outside, the space inside the pagoda was only a few dozen miles or dozens of miles in radius. However, the 4th level was a completely small world. It was more special than the first 3 levels. He had long been mentally prepared. Even if this sea was 100,000 miles in radius, he would not be surprised. However, it turned out that he had still underestimated this sea. He flew continuously for an entire day, a total of 150,000 miles, before reaching the end of the sea. The end of the sea was endless darkness. There was no material existence and it could not be crossed. He could only turn around and fly in another direction, continuing to wander in the sea. For the next 6 days he flew non-stop, exploring the entire sea. 6 days later he finally figured it out. This sea had a radius of at least 200,000 miles. In the process of exploring the sea, Ji Tianqing had not encountered a single living sea beast, but he had seen the bones of millions of sea beasts. The bottom of the dark and cold ocean was mostly black reefs or sand. There was not even a single strand of seaweed or coral. On the evening of the 7th day, the light on the sea was dim. Ji Tianqing was flying aimlessly in the sea. Suddenly, he saw a gigantic whirlpool at the end of the sea in front of him. He sped up and flew over. Only when he was near the vortex did he get a clear view of the vortex. This whirlpool had a radius of 100 miles, and around it were huge waves that were 100 feet high. Endless seawater poured into the whirlpool, stirring up a terrifying gale. The whirlpool was wide at the top and narrow at the bottom. The further down he went, the darker it became. The bottom was already pitch black and he could not see anything clearly. Ji Tianqing flew around the whirlpool a few times. After observing and considering for a moment, he decided to enter the whirlpool and investigate. After all, he had explored almost the entire sea and did not find any clues. Only this whirlpool was a rather unique area in the sea. If this space also contained the demon god's inheritance, it would most likely be hidden under the whirlpool. The entrance to the 5th level of the pagoda might also be inside the whirlpool. Swoosh! Ji Tianqing stepped into the whirlpool and his body plummeted rapidly. He was enveloped by a powerful suction force, and he was smashed into the bottom of the whirlpool like a sharp arrow. His surroundings became darker and darker, and he was quickly approaching the bottom of the whirlpool. He was about to be swallowed by the darkness. The cold water wall around him had also shrunk to a radius of 1,000 feet. At this moment, a hazy black shadow suddenly appeared in the dark and cold water wall. The black shadow was as huge as a mountain and it was at least a few thousand feet long. Like a ghost, it passed through the sea and headed straight for Ji Tianqing. Swoosh! The next moment, the huge black shadow broke through the water wall, opened its bloody mouth and bit down on Ji Tianqing. It was only then that Ji Tianqing saw it clearly. This huge black shadow was actually an ice-blue sea beast that looked like a fish. Its body was 1,000 feet long and its head was round and fat. It had a wide and flat mouth, and there were several rows of sharp and hideous fangs in its mouth. There were 2 whiskers on both sides of its mouth like dragon whiskers. There was a huge nostril above its big mouth and cold air was constantly spewing out. On its abdomen, where there should be fins, there was a pair of wide wings. Ji Tianqing did not have time to think about what species this huge sea beast was. At this critical moment, his body lit up with a golden light, and his figure flashed and teleported 5 kilometers away, appearing outside the whirlpool. Bam! Just as his figure disappeared, the huge beast's bloody mouth closed with a bang and a loud dull sound was heard. That terrifying bite force was enough to crush a 1,000-foot-tall mountain into dregs. Screech! The huge ice-blue beast's attack missed, and it immediately let out a low cry of disappointment. It flapped its wide wings and swung its wide tail, and it instantly traversed 5 kilometers of the sea, rushing in front of Ji Tianxing again. Swish! 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 It opened its bloody mouth and hundreds of icy light pillars shot out like a rain of arrows. Ji Tianxing's figure was immediately drowned by the icy light pillars. However, once he calmed down, he responded calmly and unhurriedly. He was extremely calm and composed. I've been wandering in the sea for 7 days and I've seen thousands of sea beast corpses. Now I've finally met a living one. He muttered to himself, and his right hand waved the sword of burial of heaven, and he slashed out 49 golden sword lights. The golden sword light split the seawater and slashed at the icy light pillars. Bam! 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 The sword light and the light pillars collided and there was a deafening sound. The terrifying impact spread out in all directions, and the seawater within a 15-kilometer radius was dispersed. This area had turned into an empty space like a huge bubble. The icy blue light pillars were all shattered. Ji Tianxing was unscathed, but the huge ice-blue beast was sent flying 5 kilometers away by the impact. He could see that the huge ice-blue beast's strength was only around the 7th level of the tribulation-passing realm. It was easy for him to deal with a sea beast of such strength. Star-shattering fist. Before the huge beast came to its senses, he took advantage of the opportunity to attack, and a silver fist light blasted out. Bam! The huge ice-blue beast was sent flying again, and it crashed into the dark bottom of the sea. Sky Dragon Palm. Ji Tianxing raised his left palm again, and a golden dragon light shadow which hit the head of the ice-blue beast. This time the ice-blue beast was severely injured and its consciousness was blurred. Chapter 1981. This fat fish was hit by 3 of my secret techniques, but it didn't die. It's not simple. Ji Tianxing looked at the ice-blue sea beast with bright eyes and praised it with surprise. He had already seen through the clues and guessed the identity of the sea beast. Therefore he was quite excited and had a big smile on his face. Fat fish. Burial of Heaven was stunned and said in a strange tone, "You know it's not an ordinary fish, but one of the 7 ancestors of the demon clan, the big fish of the North Sea." Ji Tianxing nodded and said with a playful smile, "There's a fish in the North Sea called the kuan. The kuan is so big that it can't be stewed in a pot. Bah, the kuan is so big that it's thousands of miles long." Burial of Heaven said faintly, "Little white dragon always liked to say this and it led you astray." Ji Tianxing nodded again and said with a smile, "That white dragon is never serious. Back then he made a mess in the demon clan and even threatened to get a kuan to ride. Those old guys of the demon clan were so angry that they chased him everywhere. He didn't think that the kuan is one of the 7 ancestors of the demon clan, the ancestor of the sea beast branch. How could he blaspheme?" Halfway through his words he saw the blue kuan escape into the whirlpool as fast as lightning. "Ah, fat fish still wants to escape." Ji Tianxing sneered and raised his left hand as fast as lightning to use the sky-capturing dragon claw. Swoosh! The dazzling golden light condensed into a giant golden dragon claw with a radius of 10,000 feet and grabbed at the blue kuan. The blue kuan was seriously injured and couldn't dodge. It was immediately wrapped by the golden dragon claw. Swoosh! Ji Tianxing clenched his left hand and the golden dragon claw grabbed the blue kuan tightly. With a thought, the golden dragon claw grabbed the blue kuan and flew back to him. The blue kuan was caught by the dragon claw and struggled anxiously and angrily. Kept making sad cries. Its voice was quite special. It possessed a powerful penetrative power that could pass through thousands of li of seawater and intimidate the souls of other creatures. Fortunately, Ji Tianxing's spirit was extremely powerful, comparable to that of a martial sage. Lan Kuan's sound wave attack was completely useless against him. Ji Tianxing looked at blue kuan with a smile. He looked at it from head to toe several times before nodding and saying, "Yes, this is the legendary kuan of the north. However, this is only a young kuan." Burial of Heaven was silent for a moment and then thoughtfully asked, "The millions of sea beast corpses we saw before were all dead 1,000 years ago. 1,000 years ago this little Kuan might not have been born yet, right? Let me take a look first. Ji Tianqing released his divine sense and probed into the blue Kuan's head, counting the number of hidden bones in its cranial cavity. Only one chaos bone has formed. The second one is only half-grown. This little Kuan has lived for about 1,500 years. Burial of Heaven hurriedly asked. This little Kuan might know the cause of the millions of sea beasts' deaths, or it might have experienced that disaster. It should be. Ji Tianqing nodded. Burial of Heaven asked again. You have dealt with many demons in the past. You should be able to understand their language and communicate with this little Kuan, right? Ji Tianqing smiled and explained. Although the Kuan of the North is a demon, it has a unique language which is different from ordinary demons. Fortunately, White Dragon was very interested in the Kuan in the past and studied the legends and heritage of the Kuan race. I accidentally read White Dragon's notes, so I have a certain understanding of the Kuan race's language and legends. Moreover, this little Kuan has reached the tribulation stage, so I can communicate with its spirit. Only then did buried Heaven feel relieved. He urged, then quickly ask it what exactly is going on here. Ji Tianqing smiled and said, Don't worry, this little Kuan is very angry now. It is very hostile and vigilant against me, so it is not convenient to ask. Then he put away the Burial of Heaven sword and controlled the golden dragon claw with his left hand, holding the blue Kuan tightly. He shot out rays of green light from his right hand and injected them into the blue Kuan's body to heal its injuries. The blue Kuan, who was struggling violently and wailing, suddenly quieted down. It stared at Ji Tianqing with a pair of big black eyes full of doubts. Obviously, it did not expect that this fiendish fellow would actually heal its injuries. It thought that it was going to die today. An hour later, the blue Kuan's injuries were mostly healed, and its emotions were stabilized. Ji Tianqing stopped casting the spell and looked at the blue Kuan with a gentle expression. He used his spirit to make strange sounds and said to the blue Kuan, Little guy, you don't have to be afraid. I won't kill you. I unintentionally entered this place and was trapped here, unable to leave. So, I have some questions to ask you and I hope you can answer truthfully. A strange spirit fluctuation was transmitted into the blue Kuan's mind. It was stunned for a moment, obviously understanding Ji Tianqing's words. It stared at Ji Tianqing with its round eyes and carefully observed for a while. It seemed to want to see if Ji Tianqing was lying. After a while, it seemed to believe Ji Tianqing and nodded its round fat head. Very good. Ji Tianqing smiled and cast a spell to remove the golden dragon claw. As the golden dragon claw disappeared, the blue Kuan immediately regained its freedom. But it did not escape again, nor did it show any signs of attacking. Obviously, its intelligence was quite high, and it knew that it was no match for Ji Tianqing and could not escape at all. In addition, it was also curious about Ji Tianqing, this strange alien, and wanted to talk to him. After a moment of silence, it blinked its big black eyes and said to Ji Tianqing with spirit sound transmission, You are also a human? You won't kill me, right? Little blue Kuan seemed to have never communicated with humans before. Even if it used its spirit sound transmission to speak the language of the Kuan clan, it stuttered and was not very fluent. Ji Tianqing understood and his expression suddenly changed. He asked in a serious tone, Little guy, have you seen a human before? Or has a human been here before? Little blue Kuan was stunned and stared at him for a long time before it stuttered and asked, You won't kill me, right? Ji Tianqing could not help but laugh. It turned out that this fat fish was most concerned about this question. I didn't expect such a silly fat fish to be so guarded and still be troubled by this question. Has it been hurt or deceived before? Is that why it is so guarded against humans? Thinking of this, he quickly nodded and said in a serious tone, Little guy, don't worry. As long as you don't have any evil intentions, I will not hurt you. With his assurance, little blue Kuan was relieved, and its expression was obviously much more relaxed. It lowered its guard, nodded its huge head and said intermittently, I've seen it before when I was very young, a human, wearing white like you. He was very scary, massacred, destroyed the spirit sea, many elders died. I was very scared, ran very far, hid for a long time, and in the end I was the only one left, still alive. After hearing little blue Kuan's words, Ji Tianqing's eyes suddenly lit up. Chapter 1982. Yangtian. Ji Tianxing was sure that the man in white that little blue Kuan was talking about was definitely Yang Tian. Yin Xing Yin Qi had already died on the first level of the divine pagoda. Only Yang Tian was missing. No one knew if he was alive or dead. A few days ago, Ji Tianxing had guessed that Yang Tian might have reached a higher level of the divine pagoda. What happened later proved that his guess was right. On the second level of the divine pagoda, the codex held by the six-armed golden war god was taken away. On the third level of the divine pagoda, the ancient tomb of the three-legged golden crow was cleaned up, and the words on the broken tombstone were also erased. On the fourth level of the divine pagoda, Yang Tian slaughtered millions of sea beasts. Almost all the sea beasts were killed, and only little blue Kuan managed to survive until now. Ji Tianxing believed that as long as he found Yang Tian, he would be able to solve all the mysteries. He looked at little blue Kuan expectantly and quickly asked, "Little guy, why did that man in white kill the sea beasts and destroy the entire deity ocean?" Little blue Kuan shook its head and said angrily, "I don't know either, but I heard him say something about the deity realm, the last step. At that time he was already crazy. I don't understand what he meant, but I guess it might be related to cultivation." Ji Tianxing heard the key information again and asked in disbelief, "Little guy, after the man in white killed the sea beasts, you still saw him and talked to him?" Little blue Kuan was speaking more and more fluently, and it was no longer stuttering like before. It nodded and explained, "I saw him. About 1,000 years ago, I was the only one left in the deity ocean. The massacre, more than 300 years ago. I thought that the bad guy had already left. Moreover, I was strong enough, so I wanted to go back to the Eye of the Sea to take a look. Who knew that the bad guy hadn't left yet and was still cultivating in the Eye of the Sea?" Ji Tianxing asked with interest, "Then he found you. With your strength you couldn't escape at all, so he caught you, right? But why didn't he kill you?" Little blue Kuan nodded and said thoughtfully, "When I was caught by him I was also very scared. However, he didn't kill me. He even talked to me for a long time. He seemed to be repenting, saying that he was wrong, and that he had gone in the wrong direction. So he didn't hurt me." Ji Tianxing vaguely understood something and muttered to himself, "As I expected, in order to break through to the martial god realm, Yang Tian did his best to climb the divine pagoda and enter layer after layer of space. More than 1,800 years ago, the Yin-Yang saints entered the divine pagoda and stayed on the first level. It was only 1,300 years ago that Yang Tian came to the fourth layer and slaughtered all the sea beasts. This meant that he had wasted 500 years in the first three levels. He had killed millions of beasts to find a chance to rank up to the martial god realm. However, after 300 years he still had not broken through to the martial god realm. He was still trapped in the vortex. Only then did he repent and find his conscience. He knew that he had chosen the wrong direction. Thinking of this, Ji Tianxing asked little blue Kuan, "Little fellow, where is the white-robed man now? Is he still in the Eye of the Sea? Or has he already left?" In his opinion, the 9th-level martial sage Yang Tian could live for at least 5,000 years. In this deity sea, other than Yang Tian, there was only little blue Kuan. Thus Yang Tian could not have died. Either he was still in the vortex or he had already left. Little blue Kuan thought for a while before explaining, "He and I stayed in the Eye of the Sea for a few years. He taught me some things. After that he let me go. He said that he wanted to calm down and make a final attempt. I left the Eye of the Sea and hid at the edge of the deity sea. I was afraid that he would go crazy one day and kill me. About 10 years later, suddenly, there was a huge explosion in the deity sea. The entire deity sea was boiling. It was a terrifying scene. Waves 1,000 feet high came crashing down. I was very scared. I saw that the sky near the Eye of the Sea was covered by golden light. It did not dissipate for half a month." Hearing this, Ji Tianxing's eyes lit up. The golden light did not dissipate for half a month? Then he must have successfully broken through to the martial god realm. Little blue Kuan shook its head and said firmly, "No, he is dead." Ji Tianxing was shocked. He asked in disbelief, "Did he fail to break through to the martial god realm?" Little blue Kuan nodded and explained, "More than 20 days later, the deity sea calmed down. I returned to the Eye of the Sea and saw his corpse. His body was smashed and his soul dissipated. He was completely dead. I found his corpse near the Eye of the Sea and some of his belongings. Originally he had killed all the sea beasts in the deity sea. I hated him to the core and we had a blood feud. But he had repented and he was already dead. Everything was over. I thought about it for a long time and buried his corpse and belongings in the eye of the sea. Ji Tianqing quickly asked, "Little guy, you did a great job. Take me to see it now." Although the Yin Yang saints were dead, as long as he found Yang Tian's corpse and belongings, he might be able to unravel the truth. The little blue Kun opened its big, black eyes wide, gazing at him. It was a little bewildered. "Why should I take you there? We just met. I don't believe you. The eye of the sea is my home and it is the safest place. If you snatch my territory, won't I have to wander again? If you also go crazy or want to kill me, won't I die miserably?" Little Blue Kun's series of questions left Ji Tianqing speechless. It was obvious that the little Blue Kun was not scheming at all and was very innocent. It only retained its instinctive vigilance and a strong sense of self-protection. The questions it had asked Ji Tianqing were the true thoughts in its heart. Ji Tianqing looked at it sincerely and explained in a serious tone, "Little guy, I just want to leave this place as soon as possible. I don't want to stay and cultivate, and it's impossible for me to snatch your territory. You and I are the only ones left in the deity sea. Without you, I don't know enough about the deity sea and can't enter the eye of the sea. I still need your help, so how can I kill you?" Little Blue Kun thought seriously for a moment before nodding. "Well, what you said makes sense. I'll believe you for now." Seeing that it finally agreed, Ji Tianqing smiled and said with relief, "That's right. Between people. Between people and Kun we should treat each other with sincerity." Little Blue Kun listened and thought carefully before nodding in agreement. "Well, that makes sense." Ji Tianqing smiled and said, "Okay, you can rest assured now. Take me there." Little Blue Kun no longer hesitated. It turned and swam toward the whirlpool not far away. It flapped its wide ice blue wings and tail and quickly entered the whirlpool like a blue stream of light. Chapter 1983. The bottom of the vortex was pitch black. However, Ji Tianqing could sense that this vortex had gathered all of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the entire divine sea. In the darkness, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth converged to form a gust of wind. He followed Little Blue Kun into the darkness and quickly passed through an invisible wall before entering an alternate dimension. Whoosh! Light returned to his eyes, and he was surrounded by ice-blue seawater that was quietly rippling. Countless strands of five-colored spiritual energy floated in the seawater like strands of seaweed. Ji Tianqing looked around and discovered that this alternate dimension was completely filled with seawater and spiritual energy. This place was magnificent, just like the legendary Crystal Palace. Little Blue Kun swam happily in front of him and it also became a little excited. Ji Tianqing followed it and flew straight ahead. Not long after, a colorful coral reef appeared in the seawater up ahead. The coral reef with a radius of 100,000 feet was covered in colorful corals and seaweed. Those seaweed and corals were all high-grade spirit medicines that had been nourished by the spiritual energy of heaven and earth for many years. They possessed powerful effects and shone with a brilliant light. There were countless shells scattered around the coral reef, and each of them was as big as a wash basin. These shells had all become sentient beings with extremely tough defenses, and fist-sized pearls and all kinds of precious pearls were hidden in their bodies. Ji Tianqing scanned the area with his divine sense, and he could see many luminous pearls, five-colored pearls and white pearls. Little Blue Kun flew to the coral reef and lay down in a huge pit in the center, adopting a leisurely posture. "This is my home," it said to Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing nodded with a smile. This is indeed a treasure trove. Not only is it convenient for cultivation, but it's also very secluded and safe. He was speaking from the bottom of his heart. Little Blue Kun was a little nervous upon hearing this and it said carefully, No. This is not a good place. There's nothing here and there's no one of our kind to talk to. It's not suitable for you to live here and you won't like it here." Ji Tianqing smiled and comforted, "Don't worry, I'm not interested in your territory. I'm a human, so I won't live in water, let alone in a pile of coral reefs. You probably don't know, but we humans can build magnificent houses and palaces, sacred and solemn pavilions. Only those are suitable for us to live in." Hearing his words, Little Blue Kun relaxed and quickly changed the topic. Didn't you want to see the white-robed man's tomb? I'll take you there now. After saying that, it continued to swim north, bringing Ji Tianxing through more than a dozen coral reefs and hills, arriving outside a cave. This cave was located on a small mountain at the bottom of the sea. The mountain rocks were pitch black and ice-cold and abnormally tough. The cave was winding, but fortunately it was only 100 feet deep. The little blue coon was too big. Naturally it couldn't enter. It pointed at the entrance of the cave with its head and said to Ji Tianxing, "That guy's bones and belongings were thrown into the cave by me. I can't go in, so you can go in and see for yourself." Thus, it stood guard outside the cave and Ji Tianxing entered the cave alone. When he passed through the darkness and reached the depths of the cave, he saw spots of white light on the black rocky ground. He focused his eyes and saw many broken bones scattered on the ground. These broken bones were milky white like white jade. They were crystal clear without any impurities. The big ones were the size of a fist and the small ones were only the size of a date pit. Even after thousands of years, these broken bones had been soaking in the sea and had not rotted. Without a doubt, these were the bones of a martial saint. Ji Tianxing went all the way into the depths of the cave, picking up hundreds of broken bones along the way. In the deepest part of the cave, there was a pit with a radius of 100 feet. It was shaped like a gourd. He found a large number of broken bones and miscellaneous items in this pit. There were broken armor, dim gems, treasured swords with broken tips, spirit stones, pearls and gems, etc. In addition, there were a few pieces of a white robe and 2 bracelets made of star silver. Ji Tianxing picked up the 2 deformed and dim bracelets and examined them carefully. This was a pair of dragon and phoenix bracelets, usually worn by couples. The dragon bracelets were engraved with the words, "hand in hand," and Yang Tian's signature. The phoenix bracelets were engraved with the words, "grow old with you," and also had Yin Qi's signature. Seeing these 2 bracelets, Ji Tianxing was completely sure that the bones here were Yang Tian's. He waved his hand and shot out a golden light, which wrapped around the hundreds of broken bones. As the golden light surged, the hundreds of broken bones were quickly pieced together. An 8-foot-tall skeleton was formed. The 4 limbs, the torso and the head were all pieced together. Only some parts were missing, such as 2 fingers and toes and a few ribs in the chest cavity. Ji Tianxing guessed that the bones were destroyed in the explosion or the little blue coon missed them. But this was not a big deal. Looking at this complete skeleton and comparing it to the Yang Tian statue he had seen before, there was basically no difference. Ji Tianxing checked the armor and the white robe fragments as well as the gems, swords and other miscellaneous items. Unfortunately, he could not see anything from these things. No, something is still missing. There must be a clue. Ji Tianxing released his divine sense and enveloped the entire cave, searching carefully. After a while, he found a black ring from the messy pile of rubble. Without a doubt, this was Yang Tian's interspatial ring. The ring had been deformed, dim and had lost its power. Yang Tian was long dead, and the soul imprint on the ring had naturally dissipated, becoming an ownerless item. Ji Tianxing used his divine sense to invade and easily opened the interspatial ring. Sure enough, there were many things stored in the interspatial ring, all of which were Yang Tian's relics. Ji Tianxing went through the items and found hundreds of primordial spirit and tribulation grade treasures, hundreds of thousands of spirit stones and hundreds of bottles of pills. There were also miscellaneous cultivation resources and miscellaneous items that had been piled up into a small mountain, and it would take a long time to identify them. Ji Tianxing was not interested in the miscellaneous items, and his attention fell on a pile of jade slips. More than 10,000 jade slips had been stored together, and they were still in good condition as they glowed faintly. "I've finally found it. There are more than 10,000 jade slips here, so there should be a lot of things recorded here." Ji Tianxing revealed a gratified smile and began to flip through the jade slips. His divine sense invaded the jade slips, and he quickly read a large amount of information. This information was either recorded in the Shenwu continent's common language or in Yang Tian's and Yin Qi's voices. Ji Tianxing read the information at an extremely fast speed without any hindrance. He flipped through more than 1,000 jade slips in a row, and most of them recorded secret techniques as well as some trivial matters about the Shenwu continent. Among them, there was also information about Yang Tian and Yin Qi's life experiences. From when the two met to when they rose to fame to when they took revenge to when they became husband and wife and finally to when they traveled the world together. After an hour, Ji Tianqing finally found a clue when he saw more than 2,000 jade slips. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.